I promise you I'm going to fix this.
I stopped believing in your bullshit a long time ago.
You were my best friend.
Look at me. I'm not your friend. You turned me into something else.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. Although maybe they're still talking about this one now that I think about it, especially recently. We are your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
And me.
And we have Tim from Deconstructing Comics here again because we're crossing over to talk about Fantastic Four from 2015.
Hello.
Welcome back,
this
Tim.
is me.
I think that's it, right?
Right, let's jump in.
All right,
yeah,
let's
we don't need
roll
to-
the tape.
Welcome to Deconstructing Comics, crossing over once again this week with comic book movie Oblivion. Welcome, Kumar and Jordan.
Thanks, Tim.
Hello.
And we're talking this time about the 2015 Fantastic Four movie directed by Josh Trank.
Yeah, I would like to start by repeating a joke I made when we talked about the third Hellboy movie, which is I would like to apologize to the Silver Surfer movie for the things I said about it last time after watching this movie.
Yeah.
Well, my take on I guess, I don't know, the way I watch movies, it's like often, even if something is kind of, what?
Yeah.
I'll just kind of bleep past it and keep going and give it the benefit of the doubt. And so, of course, there are kind of goofy places here and like, why did this happen? But I thought it was the kind of thing that we could discuss I think it's fair to try to do a different take on the Fantastic Four,
Sure.
but do you go ahead and do that if nobody wants it?
Yeah, well, it's a question. The question is, what is the core concept of the Fantastic Four? Really, what is the thing that makes it different from other Marvel books or superhero books of 1963 or up to the present? And I think most people would say, well, that's the family superhero book, the bickering family that loves each other book.
Yeah, especially since there started to be kids involved, Franklin and the subsequent ones.
Yeah, but even just the relationship with Sue and Johnny being siblings, and then the marriage between Sue and Reed. It's once you take that out of it, which I think this movie does with extreme prejudice, you don't have a Fantastic Four movie. You've got something else. You should give it a different title.
Yeah, they're all separate from each other for a big chunk of the movie.
Oh yeah, and sometimes one or the other will just disappear for like 20 minutes. Like Ben is out of the movie for 20 minutes. Reed is out of the movie for like 20 minutes.
Johnny doesn't even show up until 20 minutes.
That's right.
in.
Exactly. So often it's the
crazy.
Fantastic Three. I was watching this with my wife who didn't really know anything about Fantastic Four, and she assumed that the movie was about Johnny, Reed, Victor, and Sue.
Why wouldn't you think that?
She didn't.
Ben was barely in it.
That's right. She's like, oh, this is the Fantastic Four, because she didn't know what was coming.
Ben's not involved in the whole project. He just called in at the last minute, like because of we can talk about that some more.
Yeah.
But
Well, normally we start with the comic, and we already jumped right into talking about the film.
Yes. Well, that's my fault. Also, we should mention. So we had we didn't have any letters, but I think, Tim, you got some angry Twitter comments. I don't know why you're still on Twitter, but you had some angry messages about your
actually, that was
the Galactus saga.
That was what caused me to quit posting on Twitter. I just said, if this is the kind of feedback I'm getting, forget it. Yeah. Well, so I mean, maybe I could have written a better blurb for it in the post, but I said like that we had that there was a controversial take on the comic, the Galactus saga in the comics, and somebody posted, I should have this in front of me. Hang on a second. It didn't occur to me this was going to come up.
It'll be like your last Twitter post, right?
Basically.
Your final, I'm done.
Yeah, so what I wrote was, the Galactus trilogy is an oft-praised, oft-adapted, highly influential story in Fantastic Four 48 through 50, 1966, and yet it could be seen as flawed. Tim, Kumar, and Jordan discuss, and the link. And so, yeah, I mean, I got more feedback than I usually get, but it was all negative. So, people find it on YouTube for some reason more than they find the podcast. And so the first person wrote, I don't even need to watch this to know how retarded of a take this is. And then somebody else writes, holy shit, what a take. Not a good one either. And somebody else wrote, flawed my ass. And this opinion is flawed. And I could, as far as I could tell, nobody had actually listened to it.
Nobody listened. Right. It's just that you said could be flawed.
Could be
you
flawed.
Didn't even say it was flawed.
Yeah. Oh and God. then I actually retweeted my original post and wrote, have to wonder how many people disagreeing with my quote flawed take have actually listened to the show. And I did get one person who responded, I don't know, but now I have to listen to it because I love Silver Surfer. That person, I don't know what he thought of the podcast, but apparently he did at least listen to it. So that's a plus.
We got one extra listen out of that controversy.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay,
now Tim's off Twitter.
Yeah.
Congrats,
I mean,
trolls.
the account is still there, but yeah, I've just kind of, the stuff I used to do there, I'm doing on Blue Sky.
Right.
So we are too.
Okay, so I chose issue 51 for this episode, which is the one right after the Galactus saga. This was This is like peak. This is really peak because then after this, it's like Black Panther's in the next issue.
Black Panther introduction. Yeah.
Unreal. This period of explosive creativity.
Right between two like major remembered Fantastic Four stories.
I think this one is up there too. This is the one that like Alex Ross did a remake of this just 2 or 3 years ago, like a big 100-page graphic novel version of this one issue.
Really?
Yeah.
Version of this like 12-page comic.
Yeah. Well, it's more than it's a full issue. It's pretty.
No, it's not. It's more than 12.
This is quite a remembered issue as well. I think this monster.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. I wouldn't say. I'm not going to go out there. I'm not going to go as far as Tim and say it could be flawed. I mean, I would. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't want to get any hate mail.
Yeah.
Well, but that would require people to actually listen. So. Just don't put it on Twitter. Otherwise, then you're safe.
But it's an interesting issue. I only chose it because it's got the first appearance of the Negative Zone, which I think is called Earth Zero or something in this issue, actually.
In the movie.
No, it's called, in the movie, it's called Earth Zero. In this issue, I don't think it's called the Negative Zone yet. I think it's named that later.
No, it was, they did have a different name for it.
Eventually, it becomes the Negative Zone.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I think, sure, you picked it because it's the first appearance of the Negative Zone, but I think also it's a good issue.
Yeah.
Because it illustrates some of the things that you were saying about the Fantastic Four, that it's about interpersonal relationships among the family, and also about Ben Grimm struggling with his monstrous nature.
Yeah. And it's also typical of this era, is full of like weird science plot holes and things that don't make sense. But you just kind of zip past them. You just roll with it
because you're already onto the next thing.
That's right. So basically in this issue, Ben is walking around in the rain. He's very depressed and sad. I think this is basically he thinks that Alicia has left him is more interested in the Silver Surfer.
That seems to be it.
Yeah. And he's actually like contemplating death, like I'm just going to die this way as a rock monster. And he finds himself drawn to this part of town, as he has been several times, but he doesn't know quite why. And then this random scientist, whose name we never learn, invites him in, and we learn that this scientist has planned this. So he has built something. We
learn it because he has thought bubbles saying,
"That's right,
I've planned this."
Yeah. So he drugs.
Typical Stanley style.
He has to tell himself that.
Not realized that I have planned all this.
Yeah, in typical Stanley style, it opens with a caption which says, "Occasionally, a tale needs no introduction. This is such a tale. A rainy night, a strangely forlorn figure, and rare wonderment awaits us." So we did need an introduction as far as Stan was concerned, because he still wrote it. Anyway, there actually aren't that many captions for these several pages. But anyway, so Ben is drugged by the scientist and knocked out, and the scientist wants to use a duplication apparatus, which makes him into the Thing and turns the Thing back into Ben.
This scientist will later lament that he's wasted his life and achieved nothing. But just in these first few pages, he's invented a duplication machine.
Yep.
A subliminal
influencer,
which can make you walk to somewhere he wants you to walk to.
That's not even that's not even the thing he cares about.
And he's also invented a drug that can incapacitate the Thing.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain regular kind of drugs don't work on the Thing. So this guy is actually really talented.
Amazing. Really amazing. And seems oblivious to his own genius.
But it does work out because it's not really his talent that's in doubt. It's his sense of inferiority.
That's right. So he feels inferior to Reed. He thinks Reed is like this blowhard, arrogant guy, and he wants revenge on Reed. This is why he wanted to turn into the Thing, so he can infiltrate the Fantastic Four and basically get revenge, kill Reed, maybe.
He says he wants to destroy the Fantastic Four.
That's right.
But we find out that his reasons for wanting to do that are because he is deeply resentful of Reed Richards. He thinks Reed Richards has got all the breaks, all the resources, all the fame, and meanwhile he's been languishing in this seedy apartment in like a bad part of town.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have all those things, and Reed doesn't deserve them, and he does.
Yeah. And so then we learn, so the other thing is now that he's knocked Ben out, he needs to learn his speech mannerisms.
He says, I'd better start practicing now how to speak like Ben Grimm. It's like, you probably should have started practicing earlier.
Yes, exactly, because now we learned that it's a few days later before he comes back to the Baxter building.
Reed and how could he study because Ben is asleep, so he can't imitate.
I guess he's watching old TV. I don't know. How's he doing it? But this is
I'm
crazy.
I'm be charitable and say he needs to learn to speak with the Thing's body rather than that he needs to imitate his speech patterns exactly. But that's me being very generous.
Yes, I must begin immediately to practice speaking in exactly the same manner as the real orange-skinned Thing.
Also, he notes that this is perfect for his plan because he has a slight skeletal resemblance to the Thing.
That's right.
Are there any human beings that have a skeletal resemblance to a rock monster? I guess if anyone does, this guy does. He does have quite a kind of heavy physiognomy, doesn't he?
He might have the same. Maybe the Thing still has bones inside, I guess. We don't know.
Secret.
We don't know. But the thing that happens is a few days later, before he shows up at the Baxter building, so he shows up, he poses as the real Thing, and they're like, hey, welcome back. Where were you for all those days? And then Ben shows up. So huge question. Where was Ben during these 3 days? Why didn't he come back to base? Was he in that guy's apartment teaching him how to talk like him?
I think.
Why did the guy leave him alive?
I think maybe, why did the guy leave him alive? That's a good question. I think maybe that Ben's just been missing for a few days and it's not been that much time that's passed since the transfer.
But it does say a few days later.
Oh, does it? Okay, then forget that.
Absolutely. It says a few days later.
So Ben was just asleep for a few days.
Maybe the guy set him free from his apartment. He's been walking for 3 days, or he's been asleep for 3 days, maybe.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Just on the next panel.
Exactly. It's one of the things that doesn't matter. Yeah. So basically, they kick out the human form of Ben. They don't believe he's a Thing. They think he's a guy that just looks like Ben. Because they've got Rock Ben there. Like, how is it possible that somebody else could be Ben? Meanwhile,
this is crazy.
It is crazy because Reed is building a machine that will transform into other dimensions, and he can't believe that possibly Ben and this other guy have switched.
Well, maybe he thinks that if I didn't do this, it's not possible.
Yeah. But this is great. I mean, a lot of this stuff just slides by, like you say, Kubert. It doesn't matter that Ben was missing, like asleep on a couch for 3 weeks. It doesn't matter that this self-doubting inventor is smarter than everybody else. And yet this really bugged me that Sue and Reed didn't even think to say, hey, what did I used to call you when we were kids? Or
right.
What was the name of the street we grew up on?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't even need to have a super science background to and figure out when you've got two people and one of them might be the imposter.
Yeah, I mean that's the classic way of figuring out which is the real one and which is the imposter. I've seen that in a lot of different properties.
It's so funny to me that they don't do anything like that, or Reed doesn't build a machine, or they just kick this guy who looks identical to their old friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just kick him the hell out.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Reed
and Ben's been acting weird. Sorry, the imposter's been acting weird too.
Yes,
like
that's right.
Forgetting that he's super strong.
They don't They don't say, "Oh, that's why he's acting weird."
Until the end. Once they figure it out, then they're like, "Oh, that's why he couldn't move that thing."
We're on page 20 now. I realized why it happened.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Reed has been working on this machine in secret, which is this thing will take him another dimension, so he's able to travel faster than the speed of light, which he feels is necessary to fight people like Galactus, Silver Surfer, the Watcher, who can all do that. One thing I liked here was that he mentions, or Sue mentions, that you've had work crews in there for weeks working on this thing.
So he's not sitting there all by himself.
No, which was, I thought that I credited the Tim Story movie with that invention, that they had a whole crew in there. But no, it was actually at least mentioned that he's got a work crew building a new machine for a week or whatever. So it's
unlike this film that we're going to talk about, where they seem to do all their own welding.
Yes, in fact, yes, they do. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Need to bring in a drag racer to help. Fact. So Reed goes in this other dimension. It's Jack Kirby craziness. But
we
then
get
it
a
gets
collage. Yeah.
Yes, we get the Kirby collage. We get some weird stuff here where he's attached by a cable, which when he tugs the cable, that means Ben is supposed to pull him back into our dimension. But while he's over there, he sees the Earth, and he says, "Ahead of me, it's the one thing I feared, the one thing there can be no defense against. The elements of subspace are being irresistibly drawn back towards Earth. But here in subspace, all matter is negative, all Earth is positive. Therefore, whatever strikes the atmosphere of Earth must instantly explode." So why is this stuff coming to Earth? Was it going to crash into the Earth anyway? Is it just pure chance that he happened to appear in this negative zone while this is happening? Or did he know this? Is this why he came in the first place? I don't understand why it's happening at all.
Well, and I didn't understand why there was an Earth in the negative zone.
Exactly.
I don't think that ever appeared again.
Yeah. Well, I think that seems to be the positive Earth. That seems to be our Earth that he can see for some reason. Because that's the positive Earth, and the negative matter is going to slam into it.
The elements of subspace are being irresistibly drawn back towards Earth. Yeah, not a negative Earth and positive Earth. It's just Earth. I mean, he's referring to this area as subspace.
Yes.
Right.
So
we know it's the negative zone, but at this point we don't know anything about it. It's just a strange characteristic of this dimension is that you go in there and then you're drawn back to the place where you came from. I was okay with it.
Okay.
It's just the crisis.
Yes.
Presumably, this kind of intangible matter is constantly being drawn towards the Earth, and it's only because Reed has built his machine that he's able to perceive it and be part of it. I was fine with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And I guess the idea is that Earth is magnetic because it's positive, and this matter in subspace is negative.
Oh, that didn't even occur to me. I just assumed it was gravity.
But then there's nothing that can stop this from happening. It should have happened a billion years ago.
Yeah.
I just assume it's something that happens constantly. Like there's just always stuff's always being drawn.
Okay, then why isn't the Earth exploded as he says it would?
No, he says that it's the negative matter that explodes, not the Earth, right?
Yeah. The negative matter is going to hit the Earth, the positive Earth.
Yep. It hits the Earth's atmosphere, and then the negative matter explodes in the atmosphere. Right. It doesn't.
So why isn't it exploding all the time? You're saying this is happening all the time.
Yeah, it's happening all the time, but we just don't perceive it because we're not in the negative zone.
Oh.
Yeah, but if it's happening all the time, why
is he
afraid of it?
He says whatever
he says whatever strikes
emergency.
He says whatever strikes the atmosphere of Earth must instantly explode.
He doesn't know anything about the characteristics of this dimension yet. Why are we spending so much mental energy on this thing that Stanley tossed off in 5 minutes?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, that
60
long?
years ago.
5 whole minutes.
5 whole
minutes. Okay, so Reed tugs on the cable. He needs to go back to Earth. I don't know why.
Why
Earth is going to blow up anyway. Based on what he's seen, the Earth is going to be destroyed. I think.
He's going to be destroyed.
Okay.
Because he's now in the negative zone, he's presumably charged with that negative energy. So he'll explode if he bumps into the atmosphere.
Okay, I'll buy that.
And that's unfortunately the fate of the imposter.
Right. So the fake...
I'm just increasingly confused, but anyway.
So the fake thing is a little bit slow pulling on the rope, even though
he's having a crisis of conscience.
That's right.
Now, over the last few panels, he's started to see that Reed isn't exactly what he thought he was. He thought Reed was some kind of blowhard lightweight that had got all the breaks.
In fact, in his thought balloons, he's still thinking in the Thing's voice sometimes.
Yeah, I noticed that. That's a bit...
Which is weird.
He's a method actor.
Yeah.
He's just getting really into the Thing's character. And I think that could also, if you were being generous, you could say that's part of the reason why he has his change of heart because he's starting to identify more strongly with the character that he's playing and the people he's surrounded by.
Yeah.
As he said, I think as he plummets down into the planet, he says, "I finally found a friend."
Right.
He's known Richards for like half an hour. But I think it's like you were saying right back at the start, such as the energy of this comic, the idea that it's about binding people together as a family. Even the imposter, with his brief sojourn in the thing's body, is affected by this kind of, how would you describe it? Energy, this kind of characterization.
Yeah.
He hesitates to pull Read back. I mean, he's having a struggle. He came to destroy the Fantastic Four, but now he sees Read working to protect the Earth with no thought of reward, and in fact endangering his own health to do so. And he thinks, I've got it wrong, and he can't help but compare it to the person that he is, the guy that's been bitter and done nothing but work in solitude, creating incredible inventions to which he has put to no good use. And he eventually decides he's going to pull Read back. And Sue, meanwhile, is going, "Ben, why don't you pull him back?"
Yeah.
But he's waited too long, and the tether snaps.
Yeah. So he's got to jump onto the snapped end of it, and he enters the negative zone. And then he decides he's going to save Read by just tossing him into space. Which
he tosses him the way he came.
Yes,
it's a long shot, but it's better than nothing. Yeah, he comes in and they have a brief discussion, and the imposter thinks, I've just got to do this. He picks Read up, hurls him back the way he came, then sits down, thinks to himself, "I'm going to die now, but at least I found a friend before the end," and then he disappears.
Yes, he dies, and then the real Ben comes back to the Baxter building.
Interestingly, his destruction in subspace, or the negative zone, or whatever this is, leads to his thing powers going back to Ben.
Yeah, don't know why that works, but doesn't matter.
Why would that? Exactly.
Ben is going to see Alicia now that he's in human form, and he's just starting to knock, and then he realizes he's changed back to the Thing because the other guy died, and so that it doesn't necessarily follow that the Thing powers would revert to Ben, but that's comic book logic.
I would say it's negative zone logic, because I think this movie follows the same kind of logic in terms of anything can happen.
Oh boy, yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So we'll also briefly talk about Ultimate Fantastic Four. So for people who don't know, the Ultimate line was a line of comics that was started by Marvel in the late 90s, early 2000s.
I think this was 2004.
This series was 2004, and interestingly, probably the first movie was coming into production at the time, so that might be why they launched this series. But ostensibly, the Ultimate line was supposed to be a way for new readers to come on to comics like Spider-Man, X-Men, Avengers, Fantastic Four, without all the baggage of that soap opera continuity of 50 years. I really wonder if it brought any new people into shops. It might have brought maybe some people who were reading Batman might have come over to Spider-Man. I suspect it was mostly Spider-Man readers just buying another Spider-Man comic and Fantastic Four readers buying another Fantastic Four comic. I have trouble believing they got any new readers. But anyway, a thing that happened with most of this line was that everybody was turned into teenagers. Brian Michael Bendis was writing these, and he was famously a guy that would eavesdrop on teenagers in the mall or at McDonald's and write down what they were saying, so he would know how to write like kids. Seemed very creepy to me, but he was a hot writer there for 10, 15 years, I guess. This comic is very 2005, very Marvel of this era. It's like I mentioned, everyone's teenagers. There's really obvious, like, you can see writer needs to put in conflict here. So like Reed's dad is like a bully. There's bullies at school. It's always just really artificial conflict. It's set in modern times.
It's set in modern times, so it's not set in the 60s or whatever. It's very, I mentioned this in our last episode, but it's very much it's very serious.
Yes.
It's trying very hard to be mature.
Yes.
So there will be things like domestic violence, like Reed's father abusing him.
Yeah, well, I felt like the tone of the comic wasn't that different from the tone of the movie. This was clearly the starting point for the movie script.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The movie has a lot of.
I mean, it takes
a lot of inspiration from this comic.
This comic doesn't get quite as body horror as the movie does, but but it's not. There's not a lot of humor in it. I think the movie actually had more humor than this comic did.
Or it
There
tried
were
to be. Yeah, I think
a couple
so.
of times that it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But
So in this version,
there will also be themes of like mistrust of authority. So
yeah,
this is written during the War on Terror, and George Bush is the president of the US at the time. So that there'll often be a few swipes at Bush in the comic,
and in the movie actually.
seeing institutions as antagonistic
Yeah.
to the heroes, the superheroes.
Yeah.
So very much like that there'll be mistrust. The military runs the backs of the building. It's not it's not an independent scientific foundation. Instead, it's under the heel of the military. The military funds it, and they're expecting to weaponize kind of the inventions that come out of the Mole Man character gives us a speech about how the reason they're there is to serve their country.
Yeah.
And it not in a happy Teen Titans joining the Peace Corps and going off to Guatemala or whatever happened way back when we did Teen Titans, but you must produce weapons for the military industrial complex kind of messaging. So it's all very kind of lamely gritty and grown up.
Lamely gritty. Okay.
Yeah. So
I've never heard those two words together before.
In this version, Reed is the bullied nerd at school, and his pal is the big jock, Ben. I'm not sure why they're friends. And at home, Reed keeps building stuff using bits and pieces that he can find around. That makes his dad very angry, and he smashes his stuff. Reed tries to build a teleporter in his garage with Ben, and it causes a big explosion, and Dad goes crazy. And then there's a science fair at school, and he's built a larger version or a better version of this teleporter, and they demonstrate it. And there's a scout at the school for this big tech company, and he hires.
Well, he's a military officer.
Yes. Yeah, well,
so he is a scout, as you say, but he's a scout for the Baxter building,
right?
And I think he holds like an officer's rank or something, because I think later we see him in military uniform.
Right. Okay. So they go over to the Baxter building. We don't need to go too much into this. They try to tie all the lines together, like Mole Man is actually a guy that works, as you mentioned, works for the Baxter company, and his name's like Malevskin or something. They try to give him a realistic name, like they've tried to explain, this business.
And he looks like a mole, and he hasn't undergone. Well, actually, the original Mole Man just kind of looked like a mole too, didn't he?
Yeah, and the thing is,
that was why he was so grumpy, because he looked like a mole.
This guy, I mean, in this ultimate version, he ends up living underground with all these creatures. You don't need to give him the name like Malevkin or whatever. He's mole-like. We can call him Mole Man without that. It was slightly annoying to me. Victor Von Doom is called Victor Van Dam, which to me was more distracting, much more distracting than calling him Van Doom. Doom.
I wondered if it was meant to be. I when somebody called him that, I thought it was a joke, like they were comparing him to Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah, no, it's just bad writing, bad decision.
Really, his name.
So they finally after a few years at this company, they build this large version of their teleporter, and they switch it on out in the desert, but instead of teleporting what's inside, it affects what's outside. And so our heroes are changed, as we know, by this teleportation experiment into what they call the end zone, I think. I don't think they call it the negative zone. They just call it the end zone.
N, dash zone.
They specifically want to use it to teleport.
That's right. Yes.
And that's what Reed has been trying to do all along. The purpose of the end zone is that it's an adjacent dimension that you can use to hasten travel.
Yes.
And it's this act of being teleported by the device that changes them and gives them their abilities.
Yeah, I guess they get carried through the end zone to various locations on Earth.
Yes. Yes, so it's functioning as designed, teleporting them around, but they've also been horribly changed, part of the process. And Victor has vanished. Incidentally, in the preceding pages, Victor and Reed start working together.
Yes.
So they're initially antagonistic, but they start working together, and it's their much is canon. We know that Reed and Doom were colleagues. That's been carried over in all of the adaptations, hasn't it, so far?
Mm-hmm.
We did mention that the this company is run by Sue Storm's father.
Frank.
It's a think tank. It's a government. It's not a company. It's pretty explicitly a government-run institute. That's
right. Well, either way, anyway, this is where Mr. Storm is and where Sue Storm is. So that's how he meets her.
Yes.
In this version.
Yes. And Ben has shown up at the test because Reed has invited him to come.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very similar to the movie there.
And oh yeah, identical.
In fact, I think it's even a little bit similar to the 2005 movie in that Sue is working at the company. She was working for Victor's company in that 2005 movie.
She was.
And there's some other little differences or similarities, like Johnny wakes up in the hospital in a way that's kind of looks a bit similar to what they did in 2005.
Yes.
And, later on, after these issues, the first run of issues, Dr. Doom comes back, but he's actually fused with the metal.
Oh, yeah. We mentioned that in the preceding... Right. I'm pretty sure we did discuss it in preceding weeks, that those films did take some elements from...
Right, okay.
But this film we're discussing today takes the whole plot, or in like swaths of plot beats from the...
Yeah, and from what we heard about the original intention for the movie, it was even more like this, but some things from the comic got tossed out. We'll get to that later.
We will get to that.
I guess the other thing about here is that somebody, I think Mr. Storm, Sue's dad, notes that they've come back with the powers of earth, air, fire, and water. In the sense that like Reed is now like fluid, liquid, stretchy. I don't know that anybody's observed that before, but they don't really do anything with it, except that they start bringing in like Hindu and Greek myths.
That was the Mole Man.
Yeah, so maybe they were actually going for some sort of Greek elements thing.
I think it's just fan service. I think it's just an example of dialogue. It's just sort of tossed off in dialogue where And I think if it's like meant to actually be the case, I think that's better than personality powers, in my opinion, rather than having Johnny be on fire because he's a hothead.
Yeah.
Or Sue becoming invisible because she always feels unseen.
Yeah. It's never explained.
No.
I think this is just like, I think people, I'm not sure where it was first observed that the Fantastic Four's powers correspond kind of like to 4 elements: earth, fire, wind, water.
Yeah, I'd never seen it before this.
I know it does pop up in Neil Gaiman's 17th century.
Okay, 1602, yeah.
1602. It pops up. I saw it in that, and it's in here as well.
Oh, interesting. So Bendis thought he was being smart. Or Millar. Mark Millar was the other writer on this.
Yes, he was, yeah.
So one of those two guys thought they were onto something, maybe?
But it doesn't go anywhere.
No.
And in fact, it's later revealed that this wasn't in the issues that we read, but it's later revealed that they've taken on the characteristics when they pass through. There's a line early on in the comic where Reed says to Ben when they're still kids that he's telling him about planes. He's telling him about the adjacent dimensions. And he says, we are genetically custom made for this plane, which is not a true statement.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I noted that too.
But the purpose of that line was to set up the reveal, which is that they've taken on the characteristics of other planes. So other planes require a different genetic custom-made status.
Got it.
And as they've passed through the zones of probability in the end zone, they've acquired the characteristics of organisms that live in other dimensions.
Okay.
Incidentally, Victor's vanished. Yeah. He doesn't come back in the comics that we read, but he does eventually come back as a kind of metal monster.
Yeah.
And it was him that made the changes to the calculations that led to the accident.
Oh, right. That's right. Yes. He did it without permission. He changed Otherwise the experiment would have gone properly, I guess we're saying.
Didn't something like that happen in the first Fantastic Four movie we watched with Colossus? Wasn't there a disagreement about the calculations that led to the accident?
Yes.
History repeats itself.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if there's much more to say about this.
I think we're going to be coming back to it when we talk about the script changes.
Yes, agreed.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, I will say there's you're talking about body horror. When Reed comes back in his stretchy form, he says, "Help me," much like the Fly.
Yeah.
That's immediately what I thought of was the Fly, and even John Carpenter's The Thing.
Well, and one of the YouTube videos I watched said that the Fly was a big inspiration for the film.
Oh,
yes. I read a quote from, I can't remember where I read it.
That, you know what, that is
The Fly and Scanners also.
When I was watching it last night, and we see Victor Von Doom's shed that he's living in, my wife or Ashton, I can't remember who it was, said, oh, he's living in a dump like the Fly. How bizarre. So I guess he was effective in ripping some bits off.
Yeah, Josh Trank said in an interview that he was inspired by The Fly and Scanners. The Scanners influence is pretty clear when Doom is wandering around popping heads.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
I haven't even seen Scanners, and I caught that. Yes, that's the most famous thing about it.
Okay, so shall we talk about this movie?
Yep.
So 2015, directed by Josh Trank, who had directed Chronicle in 2012. Yes. That was a great movie. Really surprising, fresh, different superhero take. However, Tim Story's career survived his 2 Fantastic Four movies, and Josh Trank seems to have only made 1 movie since this came out.
Yeah, Capone.
Yep. But this plays out very much like the Ultimate Fantastic Four version. We start in school where Reed is so smart that it annoys his teachers for some reason. You would think he would be acing his tests and his teachers would be happy.
I thought that was odd too. Like, why is this teacher being so catty towards him? His teacher, played by Dan Castellaneta, Homer Simpson himself.
Yeah.
What an odd choice.
Yeah.
He's fine.
He's fine, but it's like a thankless. Why are you angry at this kid?
Why is my student so clever? This isn't why I got into teaching.
Exactly. So
to be fair to Dan, Reed didn't do what was required in the assignment. He was supposed to talk about a profession, and instead
like
he
a realistic career and
wanting to teleport shit.
The teacher doesn't seem to think that Reed is really capable of what he's trying to do, and he's just screwing around or pretending or something.
You know what? There's kind of like the writing, much like in Ultimate, it's very transparent what the writers are trying to do. Because two seconds before this, we listened to a student give a speech about how he wants to be an athlete that makes $20 million a year. And the teacher doesn't get angry at this kid for his dreams. He gets angry at Reed for wanting to teleport things. That's supposed to be unrealistic.
Just tick off the boxes.
Yeah.
Reed is put upon.
Being
he's having a
high-paid quarterback is easy.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Ben, who is not friends with Reed, but they go to the same school, they're in the same class. He's at home. He lives in a junkyard, a salvage yard, and his brother's a bully to him. The only time we hear the line, "It's clobbering time," is when a child is beaten in this movie.
I'd forgotten, but it does come up again
at
the climax of the film.
Isn't he like trying to come up with a line, but he doesn't?
Yes. No, he does, but he does eventually say.
Oh, he does at the end?
That's in the comic. Yeah, he's trying to come up with a line.
Yeah. Oh.
But in the film, I don't think
they come in my head.
He does it. He does it in both. When they're just about to go to Planet Zero, he says it's time to. I'll work on that. Right. But then when he's in
I didn't even really catch that. Yeah. But just as he's punching Victor, he says it's clobbering time.
But to return to Kumar's point, should this be the origin of clobbering time? An abusive elder brother?
No.
So gross. So gross. Everything in this movie is so gross and edgy and like
dark.
Yes, dark and yeah.
Things aren't better because they're dark.
Exactly.
In fact, the whole film is badly lit. Or should I say poorly lit?
Yeah.
Well, I guess also Trank had the idea that he was going to do for the Fantastic Four what Christopher Nolan did for Batman.
Yeah.
But the Fantastic Four is not Batman.
Yeah. I mean, Batman had a plenty of history of being dark in the comics by the time the first Nolan movie came out. But Fantastic Four, I mean, other than maybe Ultimate Fantastic Four had established darkness, but the regular MCU or not MCU, but 616 Fantastic Four, I don't think has ever been dark.
I would say even the Ultimate Fantastic Four is brightly colored.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is brightly colored. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Adam Kubert's drawings are nice, you know. But anyway. So meanwhile, at this junkyard, Reed is there stealing parts, and this is how him and Ben become friends. And he's building the teleporter prototype in his garage, much like he was in Ultimate Fantastic Four. There's a big explosion which wipes out the lights on the street. Dad is really mean to the kid. He's angry. It's his stepdad, actually. It's explicit in this version.
Yeah, it's interesting that here he's the stepdad. That doesn't really go anywhere. And in fact, I don't think we see the dad being particularly mean. Isn't he just watching the football and...
Yeah, but he knows that Reed's done something wrong because he says, "Reed, what did you do?" Like he knows that if something goes wrong, it's usually Reed that's blowing something up.
But before they can actually meet face to face, the scene ends.
That's it. Yeah. But I think come out here. We're being informed by the comic that the father figure is abusive. But in the
Yes.
film, he just seems to be disinterested.
I will
and
take a
bored.
$5 bet that they shot a scene where the dad came in and slapped him.
Yes, I would not take that bet because I think you're right, and it got cut.
About the stepfather bit, so one of the videos I watched about this movie was from the New Rockstars channel, and they suggested that there was a sequel intended for this movie at one point. And they might have been thinking that, in the comics, Reed's real dad is Nathaniel Richards, who left to travel through time, and maybe they were going to bring him in the future, perhaps.
Okay.
That's not impossible. My counter argument would be that they wanted to make an abusive parent more cliched and have it be the stepfather.
Right. Okay, so cut to 7 years later. Now we have the science fair scene, just like in the comic. Yeah. We have our main characters now. So now Reed is played by Miles Teller, who had just come off of Whiplash 2014.
Yep.
We've got Jamie Bell as Ben, who he's previously on Snowpiercer.
That's right, way back, the very second movie we ever did.
Yep, and they demonstrate this teleportation device.
Incidentally, the machine looks like the one in the comic too. It's vaguely triangular.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, I had a few things I wanted to say about the kids part.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think my favorite part of the movie was when Ben says, "You're insane," and Reed says, "Thanks." Also, did you notice it's supposed to be 2007, but they're using like a 90s computer? I suppose he's using old computers might be the justification for it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And Nintendo 64s. He's got a big rack of Nintendo 64s.
The controller there.
I guess because
but he's salvaging parts. So
did anyone own a Nintendo 64 in 2007?
But it's salvaged parts, right? They
console.
could be 10 years old. Yeah.
I think that's the point. I think it's meant to be old tech.
Yeah, I think
he needs to pick it up from junkyards and things.
Yeah, and so that's why he would have a 90s computer. Sure.
Right.
One of the videos was making, or maybe more than one of the videos was making fun of that. But yeah, I think that's the idea.
I don't think his stepdad spends money on his gear.
No.
I don't think his parents would spend money on nice equipment, new computers, things like that.
Now, did you think that the kids part of the movie was necessary? Could we have done without that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense. And the science fair doesn't make sense either, because he teleports a thing and Dan Castellaneta accuses him of doing a magic trick and disqualifies.
Understandable.
And he still has the same teacher 7 years later. That's also kind of weird.
Yeah.
Apparently it's a town of like 200 people where the same 5 teachers teach all the grades.
That's hilarious.
Yes.
That's funny, actually. Well, maybe he's just judging the science fair, and he's
yes, he could just be the judge.
But you're right. But I have sympathy for Dan Castellaneta here, because you could believe that these kids have invented teleportation, or you could assume that they destroyed the backboard to the basketball ring to distract you from a basic sleight of hand where they pretended to get rid of it and then brought it.
Yes, of course.
I'm sympathetic. And then instead of a scout, it's Professor Storm and Sue themselves that have shown up to this science fair. Why are they here?
Yeah, at a high school science. Well, not only why are they here, they seem to know a lot about him, because when they did that experiment as kids in the garage, when they did the teleportation, some rocks came back, some orangey rocks came back.
Yes.
And when Sue Storm shows up at the fair, she pulls out a little test tube with a sample of the same rocks. She's like, we got the same thing you did. How did she know what he got in his garage? Has he been publishing in scientific journals?
Exactly. Well, the plane that they brought back from Planet Zero did have the same dust on it.
Yeah, that
it's
little
possible
toy
that
says
Sue saw that.
Oh.
But it still raises the question, why are they here? How do they know teleportation is going on?
Yeah.
At this
how do they know that there's going to be any prospects worth scouting at a high school science fair?
And this isn't just a random drone going around attending science fairs just in case. This is the head of the Baxter building, and the head of the project to explore the.
I've thought this too. Does he have time to do this? I really wondered about that.
Does he go around to every science fair?
Well, they'd have to cast a scout for the movie too. It's easier just to go with the cast you've got.
Yes. Can we talk about Reg E. Cathey for a minute, who plays Franklin Storm, because he was also in The Mask and Tank Girl.
Yes, he was.
So he is an all-star this week.
We have to play a tone here.
Also, we have to play Fascinating because he was in an episode of TNG.
Was he really? Which one?
Yeah, Aquiel, season 7.
Oh, that's not a great episode. That's one of the ones where Geordie's lusting after holographic women.
That's right, exactly. But that's a new feature on the show, Tim, is we now say fascinating when somebody was on Star Trek.
Because we never stopped talking about Star Trek.
Fascinating.
Okay, I also want to point out that he was in The Wire. He had a long run in The Wire, and he was in House of Cards.
Yes, he was. Yeah, great actor.
Kate Mara was also in House of Cards, and Michael B. Jordan was also on The Wire. So it's possible these people met each other. I also want to say that despite everything about this movie, one good thing that came out of it was Jamie Bell and Kate Mara got married in 2017.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah.
That's nice. How did I miss that? I did so much reading for this movie.
But immediately I have a problem with this and the Ultimate version, which is that all the characters, the 4, are the same age. And it's missing a dynamic of some characters being older and some being younger. Where Johnny was like the young teenager and Reed had the gray hair. He was like the mature dad. Reed was kind of an unusual Marvel character, as we mentioned a few weeks back, being the age he was. And here it just seems like pandering to teenagers, Let's cast a young...
Yeah, everybody's 17. They're all in the same class together.
Yeah.
I just want to raise a brief point about the name that they've given for their science project, which is the Cymatic Matter Shuttle.
Okay.
Now, cymatic is not a good alternative to quantum or tachyon, as we discussed last time.
They used quantum in this movie, too. It drove me crazy.
Cymatics is specifically, I think you call it the study of the patterns that sound makes in a medium that can be disturbed by sound.
Right.
So, it's where you put some sand on a drum and then tap the drum and then the patterns that appear in the sand. That's cymatics.
Right.
That has nothing to do with transporting anything.
Yeah.
I think there's a tentative attempt to relate it to sound waves, but
yeah, because that shatters the backboard.
To some sort of like a sonic device that's contributing to the teleporting. But you wouldn't. The word cymatics is silly. It'd be like calling it the graphical matter shuttle or something like that.
Yeah.
That just pissed me off.
Yeah. Well, quantum
Even more than
in this in the
pisses
comics,
you off, Kumar.
Yeah. In the comic too, when they used quantum, it's very much like Ultimate Spider-Man. They used a genetically engineered spider, which carried over into the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. And it wasn't a radioactive spider; it was genetically engineered. But spiders don't have anything like a nervous system like humans do. You would not genetically engineer them for any reason. There's no research purpose for that. And yet they just use the word genetic engineering, much like they use the word quantum, as if they know as if it's an all-purpose.
Well, we don't even have to go back to Spider-Man. This comic that we just read used the word genetically custom made to describe suitability to living in a dimension.
Yeah. You don't know what genetics are.
No, you don't, Mark Millar. No.
So just let me have a few more cast notes. Reg E. Cathey was also in the Luke Cage TV series.
Yes, he was. One of his last roles, I think.
And Kate Mara was in Iron Man 2, and she's a voice on the Invincible TV series.
And while we're doing this, Toby Kebbell, who plays Victor Von Doom, this is his second appearance on the podcast, Kumar. He was a character in Bloodshot.
Oh, that's right.
Called Martin Axe.
Okay, right.
And there is an unnamed DC military official who presumably appears towards the end of the film, played by an actor called Marco St. John. This is actually his third appearance on the podcast, Kumar.
Whoa.
He was in Dylan Dog.
Okay.
Where he played the aged vampire Borelli that Dylan Dog goes in. And he was also an uncredited mugger's arm in Alley on the original Superman.
I remember that mugger's arm. Okay, crazy. All right, we'll have to note him down for the show notes and give him.
Thank you. You're being very patient.
Talking about cast, we should also mention Tim Blake Nelson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who was Samuel Stearns in Incredible Hulk and Captain America: Brave New World.
That's right.
And I don't want to call him leader because I didn't pick up that he was the leader in those movies.
Right.
And then later on, everybody's calling him the leader. Like, what? The leader was in this movie? What?
Yeah. I saw that. He's also in the Watchmen TV series, which we shall not mention another word about.
So he's playing Dr. Allen, who I guess was originally going to be Harvey Elder, the Mole Man.
Yes.
So that's another part of the comic that was cut.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a weird scene. Well, much later. Just remind me when we get to him again. But basically, Reed is recruited by Mr. Franklin.
Yeah, the
Franklin Storm.
Franklin Storm from the Baxter Foundation.
Yes. And they
and
go.
Why doesn't Ben get a scholarship? Ben was involved in this too. Is he just an assistant? He doesn't.
Yeah, he is just assistant.
Okay.
I thought he was going to get in. I thought that's what they were leading to. He shows up.
Yeah, I was expecting it, and then like, oh, you're just dropping Reed off. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a Fantastic Four movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, he has to vanish from the film for 40 minutes now.
Yes, that's right. So meanwhile, once Mr. Storm brings the kids into the foundation or this complex, the Baxter building, he's confronted by the board of directors. Tim Blake Nelson, I think his name is Harvey. His first name is Harvey.
Yeah, Harvey Allen.
Yeah, Harvey
Allen. So he doesn't like that he's going around recruiting kids, and he especially doesn't like that Victor Von Doom is on the team. He says Victor should be in jail.
You know what I wanted in this movie more than the part with the kids was the backstory of this project before Reed was recruited. There were all these little hints dropped, and when Johnny comes in, he sees Victor and calls him Adolf, and that's a whole other movie they should make.
What should he be in jail for? It's not made explicit.
Yeah, they don't say. They just say that he burned the servers when he left or something, and he'd been working on it for 10 years though.
But I mean, that sounds more interesting than the kid stuff.
Yeah, so Doom must be a little older than the others if he already worked on the project for 10 years.
Oh yeah, that's right.
However, he just looks the same age and acts the same age.
So, but he's left the project, so Storm has to go over there to re-recruit him, and he's living in this dive, an absolute hole. And I was like, okay, so I guess this version is not the King of Latveria or royalty in any way.
No, he's just a creepy weirdo.
Yeah.
He just has a completely. I'm not sure how to describe this scene. So someone observed that it was like Seth Brundle in The Fly.
But actually, that was a loft. That was a nice loft in Montreal. This is a dump.
He looks like he's living in a trailer.
Yeah.
And he's doing stereotypical genius stuff.
Yeah.
Like this scene lays it on pretty thick, but he has like 5 monitors on, each showing a different thing.
Yeah.
There's classical music playing, because of course there is.
Yeah.
And everything in the trailer is operated by like little servo mechanisms. So he unlocks it
when Dr.
remotely.
Storm tries to open the Venetian blinds, he like remotely closes them again somehow.
Yeah. So
on the Latveria bit, we have more to talk about there later when we're talking about the script changes.
Yep. I didn't read the original script, Tim, but I got a pretty detailed synopsis of it.
Okay.
In about
I picked up a lot of pieces from the videos I watched.
Ah, right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about it.
They bring this genius Victor back onto the project. He's very arrogant, and they basically. Okay, and then Mr. Storm, Franklin Storm, Mr. Storm Reggie Cathey goes and recruits his son, Johnny, played by
Michael B.
Jordan, who is, I would say, one of the great actors of our time. Has nothing in this movie, absolutely nothing.
He's barely in it,
and he's just bland.
He has no arc.
How can you possibly make a movie with Michael B. Jordan being like uncharismatic? It seems impossible, and he's done it.
Well, it's what's happened to the script. It's the script that's been probably not a great script to start with.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not helped by the butchering it's experienced over the life of the filmmaking process, as Tim and I will get into a bit later on. But to discuss his character, like I know almost nothing about his character.
He's a drag racer.
We're introduced to him drag racing, so I guess he's meant to be one of those like 5 easy pieces kind of character where he's off doing a blue collar job when he's actually a brilliant scientist. But we never really see him doing any brilliant science. He mostly I think he welds a bit at one point. He doesn't contribute to the project.
When he comes in, Reed asks him, have you welded before? He says, of course. And so then we see him welding.
Yep. Now we get
this doesn't go... The film can't decide what his story is. And later on in the film, he enthusiastically joins the military.
Yep.
And starts flying around shooting down predator drones.
Yep.
How did we get from drag racing to that? I don't know.
Yeah.
And of course, most damning he's barely in it.
His motivation, he crashes his car in that first scene. His motivation is to get his car back. That's why he's rejoined the project.
That was like a shit car.
Because his dad said the car was put together with his money, so he's going to keep the car from Johnny and Johnny has to work to get it back.
That's his motivation.
Yeah, his motivation is to get his car back in this movie.
If it's not totaled from that crash, we don't know.
So now we get a montage of them building the teleporter, the big full-size one. The executives come in, the board of directors come in to watch the test of the shooting a monkey into another dimension. This is a scene where Tim Blake Nelson gives a odd look to Victor Von Doom, as if they're plotting something together, but it doesn't go anywhere, right? There's no...
Well, that might be something that was lost in the script changes.
Sure. Yeah.
The reshoots.
Yeah. Weird moment for sure.
Here we get some clashing explanations for what the purpose of this teleporter is.
Right.
It's not, first of all, it's not a teleporter. The project that they're working on is not teleportation. It's about opening a portal to this other dimension.
Yes.
And we're told several times by Reg E. Cathey that it's because the Earth is dying and the Earth needs the resources of this new planet in order to survive. We're explicitly told that in as many words.
Right.
But we're never told anything about what this crisis facing the Earth is.
Well, I assumed that it was just like environmental problems that exist in the real world.
Generic climate change is what I thought it was. Yeah.
Yeah, in which they're laying it on a little thick then. I mean,
well, yeah, one of the
climate change
videos
is
also
extremely
was
serious problem, but it's not usually mentioned as an immediate apocalypse the way it's being played in this movie.
Right.
And in fact, the explanation changes too.
Yep.
Because in this scene, when they're sending the chimp through, Reg E. Cathey starts talking about how it's going to open up new vistas of scientific discovery. He says that we can learn so much about our origins. This looks like a planet that's at a primordial stage of development. We can understand the origin of the human species by exploring this place. So many avenues of research and understanding are going to open. This is not the only time shit like this happens in this movie. Dialogue and scenes will directly contradict one another. And I've got to assume that the climate change crisis, if it is indeed the climate change crisis, I'm assuming that this was maybe added in later, would be my thinking, in one of the script provisions.
Well, yeah,
to give us stakes.
You have to check the scene. Like if Kate Mara is wearing a wig, then you know it's a reshoot.
Yes, but she's not in every scene.
You can't see her scalp.
Oh my god, that wig is so jarring.
In her hair.
Oh my god, that is terrible. That wig, just terrible. That's the best they could do.
Yeah, it's like the Zack Snyder Superman mustache.
Yeah, and I should say for the listeners that by the time they did the reshoots, Kate Mara had her hair cut and color changed for a different project she was in. So she had to wear this blonde wig.
I guess they did their best, but you can absolutely tell when it's blindingly obvious when it's a reshoot because she's wearing a very obvious wig.
Yeah.
And certainly we've had some sort of like a montage of them building the thing, as you mentioned, with an interesting kind of some music playing over it. The music's not too bad in this film.
Actually, it was a famous composer, at least
Philip
one
Glass. It's
Philip Glass. Oh my god!
You can tell it's Philip Glass because it's very repetitive. It's going.
I have a question. Do you think how good or bad of a job do you think this movie did at selling the idea that Reed is a genius?
Oh, we've had a couple of scenes, right? As a kid, his parents dismissed him.
We know what his goals are, what he's trying to do. He did manage to teleport that toy car.
He seems to be a genius. He can make teleportation machine in his garage. I think it did okay up to the high school science fair.
What do you reckon, Tim?
Yeah, well, I one of the videos had brought up this point. Yeah, I think as a kid he looks like a genius. As an adult, I don't get the sense that he's any smarter than anybody else in the room.
I agree. Yeah. In fact, they need to bring in Victor Von Doom to sort some of this stuff out, right? Because he originated the project.
Sue kind of shakes our confidence in him, talking about how careless he was with the experiments that he'd done previously.
Right.
So
he's a bit more of a mad scientist than just a genius, I guess is what they're trying to present it as.
Well, here everyone's a genius. I think that's kind of I don't know if you call it. That's what the film is going for. So Johnny Storm is a genius. Sue is a genius. Reed is a genius. Von Doom is a genius. Because they're all geniuses, nobody is. So nobody really does anything clever in this movie, including Sue, who gets a whole bit where she has to use her pattern spotting genius to track down Reed. And instead of doing anything clever, she just notices that he uses a web handle Captain Nemo, and she remembers a conversation that they had earlier in the film where he admires Captain Nemo. And it's like, no, that's not smart to remembering things that you experienced.
Well, I think it's a problem of telling rather than showing.
100%.
Yeah.
They are geniuses. We just take our word for it. They're all geniuses.
Yes.
We don't have to show you them being geniuses.
Yeah. So once the test with the monkey is successful,
a CG
monkey,
ape,
and
we should
very
say.
obviously CG primate.
Well, it couldn't get a real monkey.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
All sorts of permissions, I suppose.
In the comic book, they used an apple for that experiment rather than a primate.
Yeah.
Or just a dog.
Yeah. But
why not a monkey?
A monkey.
CG monkey. Yeah, well, I understand why you would use a monkey, but I'm thinking from the filmaker's perspective.
Well, apes and monkeys are different. Chimpanzees are not monkeys.
Minute.
That's true. You're right, of course, Tim.
What did you say, Kumar?
I said CG costs $1 million per minute. I'm sure a monkey would be cheaper.
Probably. Just go to rent an ape.
So after that,
down the street in Hollywood, there.
After that experiment, Tim Blake Nelson comes in and he wants to take over the project and hand it to NASA. And the kids are like, "No, we want to be the ones that go to the other side."
We're the ones who are supposed to become the superheroes, so we got to do this.
That's right. So they get.
This is wild. I mean, they've been talking about wanting to go through themselves.
Yeah,
but it's bizarre. Again, you don't. If you're the designer, you don't do your own welding, and you don't go on your own dangerous experimental missions.
In fact, they say that in the movie. They talk about Neil Armstrong, and they say people only talk about Neil Armstrong. They don't talk about the people that designed the rocket. So they're just like, we're gonna.
Doom says it specifically.
It does fit with the original FF #1, where they snuck onto the base and got in the spaceship.
Yeah, of course it does.
It does. But my problem with this is that it's to do with Doom. Doom is the one that eggs them on to going into the other dimension. Now, this film cannot decide what Doom's character is.
All 4 of these movies cannot decide what Doom's motivation is.
That's right.
That's been consistent.
Well, we'll come back to that when he's reintroduced after leaving the film for about 50 minutes.
Yeah.
But here in this scene, Doom is like swigging whiskey out of a hip flask and like talking about Neil Armstrong and egging them on. Okay, I thought Doom was a weird autist that lived in a trailer. I didn't think he was the kind of guy that.
Yeah, now he's a bro.
Now he's a cool. now he's James Dean. Like, is Doom supposed to be, like robotic? Is he supposed to be sinister? Is he supposed to be rebellious? Is he supposed to be avuncular? He's all 4 of those things. And we don't have enough time to explore any of them in any depth. Look, a person can be all 4 of those things in their lifetime, I suppose, but we don't have enough time to. Instead, it just looks like he's yo-yoing all over the place. And I've got to conclude this film famously had a troubled production and was rewritten as they were shooting it. And I've got to assume that people are just chucking pages at this poor guy, whatever, Kebbell, and he's just doing the best with what he's got. Actually, I read an interview with him where he said he had a really good time on filming the movie, and he's one of the few.
He's the only one who did.
That's correct. He's the only defender of Trank.
Right.
We could also mention the lack of development of the love triangle.
Or quadrangle?
If it's even there. So we see
Tell us
Victor
about that,
watching Reed and Sue, watching Reed and Sue laughing together, and he calls Reed over. And we think that there's going to be a big confrontation about Sue, but Victor says, you're being unprofessional. You're just goofing around when you should be working. And Reed says, "Oh, we finished." And then Victor completely drops the anger bit, and I want to see what you did. And it never comes up again until the final climax of the movie when they're in Earth Zero.
I was baffled by it was unnecessary. He's not motivated by jealousy in his final attack as Dr. Doom. So why did it need to be in there? And also, how many lines are spoken by women in this movie? How many women are in this movie? It's basically Sue and a few a few technical operators, and basically she's lusted after by 2-3 different characters. Baffling.
We don't even have any like babes running around like we did at the party in the second Fantastic Four movie. Where are the women in this world?
Sexy military attaches hitting on Johnny Storm.
Yeah.
Franklin Ray or whatever, and Frankie Ray.
Frankie Ray, yeah. That's it. I mean, there are some other women working in the lab, but they never speak.
Barely, yeah.
They just kind of walking around.
Often you'll see 5 guys in a row working the computers, and there's no women among them.
Yeah.
It comes again and again in this. Yeah.
This is the opposite of Why the Last Man.
Yes.
Yes. S, the Last Woman.
Yeah.
By the way, I wanted to, the thing where they're drinking and then they say, okay, well, let's jump dimensions. I was saying friends don't let friends dimension hop drunk.
Yeah.
This is rather like The Fly as well, isn't it? Because of course, Seth Brundle gets drunk before teleporting through the pods. So these drunk idiots call up Ben Grimm. Well, Reed specifically calls him up, and he somehow gets into the Baxter building in time for them not to sober up. I thought he lived out in the suburbs or something. But...
He lives 40 minutes away by train.
Okay.
That's said out loud.
I guess they keep drinking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, Reed comes down to the front door, I think, and No, maybe he doesn't.
Waves him through security.
Yeah,
he does. He does. Yep.
Yeah, and he tells the guard it's okay, he's with me.
Yeah. So they get in spacesuits, much like the monkey had on. But by the way, I guess they need these suits because there's no atmosphere, but later they're not wearing the suits in the movie when they go back.
Oh God, you're right. I think
but maybe because they have powers, they don't need suits later on.
I completely missed that.
Yeah, me too.
I assume they're just being cautious. If you're going to a strange dimension, you wear an environment.
Yes, okay, I'll buy
maybe
that.
from
Maybe
their
there is
first try. Well, of course, when those other guys go back later, when they bring Doom back, they're wearing the spacesuits again.
Yeah.
But you don't wear spacesuits over your Fantastic Four costumes, I guess.
You're right. I missed that.
I guess.
They all catch a terrible bug.
So, by the way, they arrive in this other dimension. They plant a U.S. flag. I don't know how Victor feels about this because he's from Latveria.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any objection to them planting a U.S. flag in another dimension. And they're not documenting any of it except that Johnny takes a picture for Instagram.
Yep.
What kind of scientists are these guys?
They're bad. They are really bad scientists.
Yep.
They're really drunk scientists. In the original script, when they arrived in the negative zone, Planet Zero, whatever it's called, Reed is supposed to look down and see the toy car he sent way back in that earlier scene.
Yeah, you would think that would happen. Yeah.
Why would they take that out? That would have been a really great callback.
That would have been a good touch. Yeah, for sure.
Strange.
But they get caught in an accident. By the way, they're able to repel.
First of all, speaking of bad scientists, the idiocy continues because when they plant the flag, there's some sort of effect, like a fissure opens and green light shines through it, and Doom follows the trail of the fissure, and it leads way off into the distance where these green
they
pools.
Have to climb down a cliff.
They incredibly stupidly just free climb down. Well, I think they have a rope.
They have a rope. Yeah, they're doing mountain climbing technique. With
can you mountain climb in a spacesuit?
Apparently, those spacesuits are outfitted for anything.
I guess they're drunk, but
are they
drunk explorers in another dimension?
In abseiling is my question.
I cannot believe. I could not believe that. Were they trained in abseiling? I couldn't believe that they were climbing down a cliff in this possibly incredibly dangerous other dimension. Not only did they climb down it, but Victor just goes up to one of these orange pools, which could be green pools, which could be anything. It could be nuclear waste.
Yeah.
It could be. It could be radioactive. It could be acid. He sticks his hand in it.
Yep. Yeah, that's crazy.
Geniuses.
Yeah, and then that causes all kinds of explosions, and so then they're hightailing it back to the ship, but the rope breaks because of the green slime, and Victor plummets into a pool of green slime off the cliff.
And that's it. Then Victor, he's gone.
And then they just we got to get out of here, and we can't leave Victor. Yes, we can.
They just leave him. They just abandon him. They get back in the pod. Sue, incidentally, is not even there. It's worth mentioning.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean that really surprised me. Sue only gets powers because of what happens when they arrive back in our dimension. But yeah, so they try to get back in the ship, and for some reason Ben's door pops open, and he's pelted with a bunch of rocks. And like, boy, how obvious can you be?
Oh yeah, not just that, but then Johnny Storm's pod catches on fire.
Yeah.
So this is even worse than personality powers, Kumar.
Yeah. And
this
so
is you
damage
catch
powers
on fire, then you
and
get
so I
fire
guess
powers.
in Reed's pod there must be a bunch of rubber bands.
Like the Thing, or not the Fly. Like the Fly. He was teleported and merged with the rubber band. It is
like the Fly. It's like the Fly.
Yeah.
Oh my God, how did I not realize that?
Yeah.
But here we've got, but is it like the Fly? Well, it is. But now they go back to their own dimension, and there's an explosion, and because Sue's the one that has to bring them back.
Yeah.
She gets an update on her phone that someone's using the teleporter. What's it called? Is that a name?
Wait. It's called the Quantum Gate.
Quantum Gate.
That made me angry. But here, I have a. What was my question about this?
So
I've lost it. I was very angry about something, and I've lost it.
I'll continue my summary, and then perhaps it'll come back to you. So Sue is just working, and she gets an update on her.
Yeah. Okay, I remember it.
Yep. Okay.
I remember it. When they went over, they just set all the dials to automatic, right? Yep. They get in the pods, they go over. So they're supposed to be able to touch the dials and just come back, right?
Yep.
So what stops them from just automatically coming back the way they automatically went
Probably
over?
whatever's going on with the green energy. It's disrupted.
So they need to be manually brought.
So Sue needs to manually bring them back.
Okay.
Which is what she does.
Okay.
When they're brought back, the gate explodes, the apparatus explodes, and a shockwave hits Sue and blasts her against the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she starts to turn invisible right away then.
By the way, this is about 45 minutes into the movie. This is the longest we've had to wait for the team to get powers.
This is way too long.
Was it that? I was thinking it was more like 55, but yeah.
No one gets a power until 50.
Well, we don't get to see them really use their powers
the movie's
for another
half done
10
at
minutes.
This point.
Yeah.
Unbelievable that you would wait until a movie's half over before you give your characters. This is the pacing is just way off in this movie.
Yeah.
I just cannot believe it.
The rumor is that the MCU version is not going to do the origin story.
I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like with Spider-Man. I mean, it's been done multiple times already. Why do it again?
Yeah.
Yeah, because this film has enough origin story for 3 movies.
Yeah.
All right. Now I have the quantum. Where do the Fantastic Four get their powers from?
Great question. From being exposed to the atmosphere.
Sue was never exposed to it.
Random energy from Planet Zero.
Sue didn't go to Planet Zero.
But it shot out. It was teleported into our realm. It's like a bit of sunlight. Imagine if it was a sunbeam that got teleported and those photons emerged in our universe and she was bathed in them.
Okay, that's not bad. That works. I'm only bringing this, and the film later on says specifically that they got their powers from Planet Zero.
Yeah.
And that's why they need to return so they can find the cure on Planet Zero. The problem with that, of course, is, first problem is, like I said, that Sue didn't go to Planet Zero. So, but it's possible she was exposed to something from it when they came back through the gate, I suppose. The real reason is, in the original script, it's the gate that gives them their powers, much like it does in Ultimate Fantastic Four.
Right.
Uh-huh.
In the original script that Jeremy Slater wrote, both Johnny and Sue stay in our dimension, and it's Ben, Victor, and Reed that go through the other dimension. Then the pod is attacked when they pass back through and explodes on arrival when they get back, and that's what gives them their powers. Doom remains in the other dimension and gets his powers in an unrelated incident, which we'll talk about later. So that's directly drawn from Ultimate Fantasy 4, where it's the teleporter, and I guess and like the Fly. But here they've changed it to make it so that it's the planet itself that gave them their powers, but that doesn't doesn't quite work because Sue didn't go to the planet. There is a case for saying that she's still exposed. She's on the other side of the room behind glass.
Is it like the teleporter is appearing and disappearing, and so when the teleporter bathes her in its energy, she's appearing and disappearing?
Still doesn't explain why Reed got stretchy powers.
Well,
Seriously,
we know
having the rocks and the fire just raises more
there's
questions
not a
than it
single
answers.
version of Fantastic Four that explains why the four of them have 4 different sets of power instead of all having the same power. Yeah. Okay, so they wake up in a military complex where they're being interrogated, and the army.
Yeah, and this is where we get the body horror with the creepiest depiction of Reed's power that I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I thought last week's was gross, but this one is worse. Because he stays. They've got him stretched out, and he stays stretched.
Yeah, and he looks rigid, as if you think that he can't move those long arms and legs, but he can actually. But it doesn't look like it.
Yeah.
Yep. Much like everyone's separate again. The Fantastic Four is getting separated in a compound.
Yeah.
Happened in Rise of the Silver Surfer. Happened in 1990.
And then, one of my pet peeves is people asking questions that other people just ignore. Reed is saying, "Where's Ben? Where are my friends?" And the other guys, the scientists or whatever, don't even acknowledge his question. They just say, "Do this, do that."
They do it to Ben as well. Ben asks questions when that guy comes in. He says, "Where's Reed?" And the guy doesn't answer his question.
Ignores him.
Yeah. But Reed basically uses his stretchiness to run away from this compound. Ben is angry. And then we cut to 1 year later.
Yeah, that was where I really get my
Yeah, so this is at the 55-minute mark.
Reed has told Ben, coming back, I'm gonna fix this. And so I imagine that within a week or two, he's going to come back and he's going to have some kind of plan. He's going to break them all out. That's not what happens. It's a year later and he's still on the run. He's in Panama or something. And the rest of them have been recruited by the military.
Yep. And as Jordan mentioned at the beginning, Johnny likes going on these military operations. The Thing is already doing them.
Thing's done several of them.
Yeah, he's killed people. I think there's even a mention of how many people he's killed at one stage.
His last kills 43.
That's right, 43.
Jesus Christ!
Right. So the Thing murders people now.
This is an absolute edgelord movie. This is
that's a perfect word for it, edgelord.
Yeah.
The Thing's really just he's been going out and ripping up tanks on quote unquote covert ops. I'm not sure how covert it is when you're sending a giant rock monster into doing
I sent you guys a video from Filmento that I thought was really good, talking a lot about this 1 year later skip and how it sort of hits the reset button on the whole movie. And it completely skips over the character development of how do they deal with this change. We just go straight to they've already dealt with the change, and now we've let all the tension out of the movie, and we're starting over.
It's interesting because 2007, the 2005-7 movies, they didn't react enough to the change. They were like, "Oh, we got powers, cool, whatever."
Just like in the comics.
Yeah, and it seems like the MCU version is just going to skip all that completely because nobody knows how to deal with this.
Yeah, well, you could have it if characterization isn't so important in your movie. So in this film, we spending comparatively little time on people using their powers and set piece battles and Marvel style craziness. Yeah. Instead, we want a dark, kind of gritty exploration of children recruited by the military and people struggling with one another, and what am I going to do with my life if I'm not a drag racer, and all of these questions. And as Filmento pointed out, you can't do that and have a 1 year time skip. Filmento, on the other hand, was incorrect Filmento thinks that the first 50 minutes of the film are pretty good. I think that's very debatable. And he thinks that the time skip is the result of executive meddling. Unfortunately, that's not true. The time skip was very much present from the very earliest drafts by Jeremy Slater, whereas in fact it was going to be a 4 year time skip.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yikes.
Okay. But some of these scenes, certainly Kate Mara's wearing her wig.
Yep.
These scenes in the
it's almost all the way through the movie.
It's almost all wig from this point. Well, you've seen it already earlier on.
Right.
There's a scene where she and Reed and Victor and her dad are talking in the lab, and you can see she's wearing the wig there.
Okay. Right.
It starts amping up at this point. Yes.
Yeah, it's you almost never see her real hair from this point, maybe once or twice.
Right. So Reed is in Panama, as we mentioned. He's able to morph his face to look like other races. He can make
he's a shapeshifter now, which is I don't think Reed ever really did.
And it's maybe I don't remember him ever making himself look Latinx.
Well, here's the thing. He changes his skin tone.
Yeah, that's weird.
In that is really weird. How is that stretching?
Yeah.
In 2005, Reed makes himself look like Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
In that deleted scene.
Yeah.
In the scene that made it in, he gives himself the Chad face with the big jaw and the cheekbones, but he doesn't change his skin color.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a stretch.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So an hour and 5 minutes into the movie, we get the first fight when the army is sent to retrieve Reed Richards, and the Thing goes there and they fight, which is annoying. This is not, I mean, I know Ben is annoyed at Reed for turning him into a monster throughout the history of the comics and calls him calls him all these names for being a nerd. But for them to have a fist fight where he's genuinely like hates him, left a bad taste in my mouth. It's not what I wanted from a Fantastic Four movie.
Well, none of this movie is really.
Exactly.
But...
Exactly.
And as we mentioned, Sue is the one that finds Reed. She's convinced by her father to use her remembering a conversation they had in the library power to find him in Panama.
Yeah. So they're going to go through the portal again.
Yep.
I think a team goes through. Now, here's my question. They're what were they going through for this time? They
need the cure. Like they're at loggerheads. So the board, including what's his name again? Harvey Allen.
Tim Blake Nelson.
Tim Blake Nelson.
Yeah, Harvey Allen. Yeah.
They want the technology.
Yeah.
They want the super soldier serum. No, they specifically want the super soldier serum.
Oh, right. Yeah. They want more superheroes.
They want to make more of the things.
Yeah.
And that's why they want to go through.
Right.
And you've got Franklin, Storm, Sue, Ben, not so much Johnny. They want to go through to find a cure.
Okay, here's my question about the cure.
Yeah.
How do you know it's over there? Can you get it in 5 minutes and come back? What is it? Is it a form of radiation? Is it a serum? What is it? Wouldn't it take 30, 50 years? What's the cure for cancer? How long does it take to find a cure for this thing in another dimension? You don't even know anything about this other dimension.
Yeah, this is so contrived that I think this is rewrites.
Yeah.
Which is why they changed it from the exploding quantum gate giving them their powers to the other dimension. So we've just got to have a pressing reason for them to go back.
If there had been something like there was a flower on the other dimension that we saw the first time, and when they touched it, they turned normal. And then now we have to go back and get that flower. I'd be like, okay, go find the flower. Yes. But there's no indication of what form this cure possibly is that they could just go and get it.
I remember thinking, how do you cure a Pylarox anyway?
Yeah.
This is wildly optimistic. Yeah. But
just go to the Earth Zero drugstore and pick up the cure.
Yeah.
So I had another question here. How? I mean, you need it for the movie, but how do they establish radio contact with the pod in another dimension?
Where that bugged me as well.
Where are these waves traveling from and to?
Yeah, sure. Well, I also had a question in Fantastic Four number 51 as to how there was a tether going from our planet to another dimension that was holding Reed there. And I guess it works on the same principle. You can just, it's just another place.
And then he can see our planet while he's out there.
That's right.
Yeah, that's weird.
But that bugged me too, Tim, in the film. And in the end, I just had to just say, who cares?
Yeah.
But does it open a portal? Maybe the portal stays open a tiny bit enough to let radio waves through. Don't worry about it. Don't worry.
But they find Dr. Doom over there. He's still alive.
And he's found a hood somewhere.
Where did he get that hood?
I had that question too.
He's limping, which he doesn't limp. He's limping now, but his limp vanishes.
Yes, that's right. He starts with a limp.
I saw that in a lot of the reshoots, Toby Kebbell couldn't show up, and they had a double wearing his costume in a lot of these scenes. And he was upset when he saw this scene because he said he wouldn't have limped like that. He thought it didn't look right.
I think I've got the quote. Which page is it on? Here we go. This was in The Best Actor You May Never Recognize, published in the Daily Beast 2016. He says, unfortunately, I played Doom in just 3 points. Walking down a corridor, killing the Doctor, and getting into the time machine and lying on the bench. So he calls the portal, the quantum gate, a time machine. Those were the only times I played Doom. Everything else was some other guy on some other day doing some other thing. I was infuriated that he was allowed to limp like that. While we're on the subject of this article, Tony Kebbell also mentions that he shot a lot of other footage for as Doctor Doom that wasn't included. So in a scene that was shot but not included, Doom doesn't just disappear in a pile of goo for the film for 40 minutes. He actually comes back out of that goo and saves them when they're in the pod.
Okay.
He does something that helps them get back to their own dimension, but he's abandoned. He's still left behind.
Okay.
So he doesn't just fall in the pile of goo and vanish. He had a scene where, I guess, to make his later face heel turn a little bit more convincing. He also said there's a scene of him, he quote, "I missed the press tour for Planet of the Apes," he was in Planet of the Apes, "because I was lying under rubble, slowly rising out of the ashes to be Doctor Doom." He lamented, "Never made it to the film." Yeah, it's a big problem that he vanishes and then he just sort of comes back in this scene where he's limping.
Yeah. So he's found that he's fused with his spacesuit, his dimension suit.
Yeah, he looks like a kind of, he looks like a robot.
Yeah. And yeah, even like the Doctor Doom face mask from the comics is like a weird closure over his mouth in this version. Oh, I guess they have their masks had a mask like that, the helmets underneath their helmets. So when they bring him back to the base, he, as we mentioned, has all these psychic powers, a bit like Tetsuo actually was walking down these hospital corridors and blowing people up.
Yep.
And now I'm very confused. He wants to go back to his world.
Yep.
So why did he have them rescue him in the first place? Why didn't he just say, "I want to stay here in this world.
Leave me here, please.
Take me back to
He wants to
Earth."
go back to his world, and then they stop him. Reg E, Cathey stops him. Why? Let him go. Let him go back.
Here, this is what I've got put down in my notes as, "Welcome to part 4 of What the Fuck is Doom's Plan?
Yes.
/ Endgame."
Every movie. Every Fantastic Four movie. What does he want?
Yeah. When the NASA guys arrive, he says, "I knew you'd come back," and he limps out of the distance. They immediately put him on a stretcher and take him back through the portal. Yeah, if he didn't want to do that, why did he go? Maybe he was, I don't know, maybe his limp was so bad he couldn't resist them, but then he comes back to Earth and his limp gets better. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like that Doom appears and then he kills everybody on the mission, and then the four have to go to Earth Zero to fight Doom or something. That's what I was more expecting.
Yeah, that would have made more sense. Instead, he comes through, as we mentioned. He lies on a bench. He blows up Harvey Allen because Harvey Allen's been acting like a dick the whole movie, so he needs to get his comeuppance.
And I guess because that character wasn't going to be the Mole Man, so they didn't need him anymore. That's one of the videos.
He was originally going to be the Mole Man.
Yeah,
so,
with a different character name. Yeah.
But he now feels threatened by the people of Earth. He thinks the people of Earth are going to tap his dimension for all its resources.
Well, he doesn't specifically say that. He just says...
He says something to that
He says a bunch of stuff. He just sort of says, "Oh, you've destroyed your world, and now you're going to destroy my world."
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
And he says humanity had its chance or something. Yep. Had its chance for what? For what?
I guess he believes he's a superior species, a man of one.
So does he think he's evolved? It's nothing he says gives me any sense. He says
the Earth is dying. Yes. Humanity had its chance. So what I guess he means is, you screwed up. You're not going to screw up my world too.
So he could have just gone home, and then he just wants to go home.
Yeah.
And they're trying to stop him. Why? He's horribly dangerous. He's popping everyone's heads.
Yeah.
Just let him go.
Yeah. So he goes back over there and then
kills Franklin Storm.
Yes. Somehow, when he's there, he telepathically forms a portal from that dimension to our dimension. He didn't need the gate. He didn't need the quantum gate. He can just think about it. And he starts pulling in matter from our world, which is turning into energy in his world.
He does two things, actually. Two things happen.
Okay.
I just want to mention that he does all those things you just said, but there was something else going on as well. Now, all through this movie, or at least on two or three other occasions in the film, people have chided Reed for his original teleportation experiments, telling him, "You could have created a black hole."
Right.
You could have created a black hole and the Earth would have got sucked into it. Then, as Reed gets into the teleport machine and uses it to get back to his other dimension, as Doom gets into it and uses it to go back to his own dimension or his adopted dimension or whatever we want to call it, Reed says he's going to collapse the gate and make a black hole.
He's going to cross the streams.
That will swallow the Earth.
Yeah. There's been foreshadowing, right? that's the plan, that you know, like that's what can happen. Then, as you said, he goes back to his dimension. He uses his power somehow, his telekinesis, to raise two enormous pillars and create a sky beam that starts sucking the Earth into his dimension and turning it into
energy. Matter from our world turns into energy in his world. What does he need that energy for?
Well, Reed says now, back in our dimension, Reed says he's pulling everything into the other dimension. Yeah. I thought he was making a black hole. Those two things are not the same.
Right. You think? Wait. So Dr. Doom was creating a black hole?
Yeah. That was what. I leave that line in.
Okay.
So I've got to guess that Skybeam is the.
There's another problem with the Skybeam. You can see the amount of matter it's pulling in, and this will take thousands of years to pull in the whole Earth. Tens of thousands of years. It's a very slow process.
Maybe it's exponential. Maybe it speeds up the longer it goes on. But yeah, you're right. Of course, it runs for like 15 minutes, and it just digs up
just makes a Grand Canyon. Basically.
Well, not even that. It's just it's like one of the holes that the Silver Surfer made, except much more shallow. It's just like 100 feet, like a million cubic square meters of dirt or something, which sounds like a lot, but it's not really.
Yeah. So then they go into the other dimension. They fight Dr. Doom. He puts on the cape again for some reason.
Because it's.
Do we need to go into this fight a lot? I don't think so.
This black hole thing's bugging me. Doom. I think in the original draft, Doom was going to make a black hole. Okay. And I guess they would have to cross over in the dimension and defeat him to stop the black hole back on Earth somehow. But then that was abandoned for a Skybeam because this is what, when did this film come out again?
2015.
2015. Is this peak Skybeam? Lots of movies have Skybeams, right? Around this time.
Yeah.
Like you wait when did the Avengers come out? That was 2012, was it, the Avengers?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah.
So someone's come in and said, we gotta have a Skybeam. You gotta have a Skybeam, kid. You want your movie to do well? Avengers had a Skybeam. Put a Skybeam in your movie. So the black hole's out, but they left all the foreshadowing dialogue and the original line where Reed. Why would you leave that in? Where Reed says he's creating a black hole. Maybe they thought there was enough conceptual overlap between a black hole and a Skybeam that we wouldn't notice.
Well, I mean, stuff is being sucked in, so people
associate
that with the black hole. Yeah.
Yeah.
They fight. They beat Dr. Doom.
Well, and I wanted to say, so I mean, they each try to attack him separately, and then Ben says we can't beat him. None of us is strong enough, and Reed says, right, but together we're strong enough. And so teamwork, and they beat him, which was fine, but I felt like it wasn't really earned by the rest of the movie. I mean, just all of a sudden, let's work together.
Yeah.
And there wasn't really any emotion to it.
You hardly know these people, and
Johnny and they hardly know each other, I think.
That's right.
Johnny especially after all of the anger at Reed for running away. And he only came back because Ben went on that mission and caught him.
Yeah.
And then they just trusted him to be a scientist again because they needed help getting back.
They needed him to fix the machine, which he did in less than 10 minutes. That actually,
right. So is he a criminal or is he a temp? I'm not sure.
Well, he doesn't want to help them.
He's an intern.
But then Sue goes to him and says, she convinces him to fix the gate by saying, you told me back in that conversation where they talked about Captain Nemo. She says, you told me that you wanted to make a difference. Now's your chance to make a difference. Is helping the military get to the green goo world making a difference, really?
Yeah.
Well, it's a difference, but what kind of difference?
Is that the kind of difference you're setting out to make?
I have to say, too, Johnny all this time has wanted to keep his powers and stay in the military.
Yep.
Which compared to the Chris Evans portrayal of that is not nearly as fun. Chris was just like, this is awesome. Having powers is awesome. I got these girls. I got these cars. I love my life. This was some weird thing where he's like, I want to go out there and fight for the military.
Bizarre.
As you pointed out, he was a drag racer. It seems like he would not be okay with authority figures. It doesn't add up. It was
like Tim said, this is the year skip means that we never learn why he wanted to do that. It's completely unearned. Well, and also, why would he change his mind? At the end of the film, they all go and live in a big research facility, and they're all friends now. Why has Johnny decided that the military is no good anymore? What made him change his mind?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the characters are inconsistent. One of the videos pointed out that, this is the guy who was into drag racing on the street, but then, climbing down a cliff is too big, too scary for him. Like, nope, I'm not going to climb down a cliff.
He stays at the top, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, which works out because they need an anchor. But yeah, it's like, I thought he was a daredevil.
It should have been Ben that stayed up there because he was the only sober one.
And he's much heavier. It would make a good.
No,
anchor.
he's. I must say, no. He's smaller than everyone else in the film. Remember, which
I
think is
a
fun.
He's not the thing yet. Yeah,
I thought that was a fun kind of thing to do to make Ben not a big hulking guy, and instead a small guy that became big.
Right.
Unfortunately, they don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
He could have been big all along, and it would have had the same impact on the story.
So credits roll at 1 hour and 33 minutes. That's
you forgot about the great moment where they come up with their superhero name.
Yeah.
Remember that?
You mean the hackneyed moment?
It was forced and unforced. I like the way the title card came up. But then when he heard the word fantastic, that was like awful.
What did you say?
Yeah. What did you say? What word?
Yes, say that again.
I think you heard him clearly. Yeah. Okay, trivia time, I guess.
All right, I'll jump right in. Okay.
Let's try to keep this to under an hour.
Okay, don't worry. It won't be as long as you think. So,
well, I'm wondering what information you've got there, because from what I heard from these videos, there were apparently several different versions of the original. Well, I know like Slater wrote thousands of pages like with rewrites, but I mean, I heard several different versions of what was quote unquote supposed to happen in this movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much material out there. I'll try and stick to one version.
Okay.
Well, I'll talk about Slater's original. So they decided on making a reboot. Apparently, as early as 2009, a reboot of Fantastic Four was announced. So only 2 years after the previous film.
Yeah, and of course, Fox needed to make the movie because otherwise they lose the rights.
Yes, of course. They're interested in hanging on to the property, especially, 2009 is still pretty early, but the Marvel juggernaut is starting to, really start rolling. Especially by 2012, which is when Josh Trank is attached as the director, basically off the success of Chronicle. At that point as well, Jeremy Slater is attached as the writer. Trank and Slater know one another. They knew one another when they were younger men and had worked on, Josh Trank is pretty young anyway. Yeah. I think he's only 31 when he directs this film. But they'd, been collaborated on projects before. And Slater is like a comic books kind of guy.
Yeah, so and Trank is not.
No. In fact, Slater's gone on the record since then that Trank didn't understand any of the comic book beats or references.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah. So
that's interesting because, Chronicles seem to be lifting from Akira pretty heavily.
Yeah.
And this movie did too in that one scene. So maybe his thing is just Akira, not comic books. All right. Anyway, go ahead.
I doubt he's read the manga, Kumar.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Watch the anime.
Yeah. So Slater, he wrote this first draft for this, and he also wrote the first draft for Death Note 2017, Kumar. But both this film and that film, he got absolutely screwed with rewrites. So as Tim pointed out, Slater estimated that he wrote about 18 drafts for this and did 2,000 pages of material. He says only 2 of those drafts eventually made it to the studio, in his opinion, because Trank appointed himself as the go-between between Slater and Fox, in an effort, it seems, to control, like the messages, so that he could be in control.
Yeah, and I guess he selectively passed messages on, from what I heard. Yeah.
So we have a quote from Slater: "Right from the start of the process, Josh told me I wasn't allowed to speak to Fox without him present. And he said I never saw 95% of the notes that he passed on to Fox." I can talk a little bit about Slater's original script now, or I can talk a bit more about it. I'll talk about it now. All right, so in his original script included not just the Fantastic Four and Doctor Doom's origins, but also Herbie the Robot was in it, Fantasticar was in it, Mole Man was in it, and Galactus himself was in it.
Whoa, this sounds like the MCU movie.
Exactly. That's where Slater's drawing his inspiration from Ultimate Fantastic Four specifically, and Marvel movies more generally. He wanted some Marvel craziness, like nonstop kind of just craziness happening all the time.
But what I mean is that Galactus and the robot are in the upcoming MCU.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. So in Slater's original script, Reed and Ben are friends like they are in this, but we get more footage of Ben sticking up for Reed, being his kind of like protector, the way he was. Reed goes to the Baxter building with a scholarship, like he does in the film. There, Victor is a spy for the Latvian government.
Oh.
So he's not the ruler of Latveria. Rather, he's one of the brilliant kids, but he's also secretly feeding research to his Latvian homeland. As I mentioned, Sue and Johnny stay back when they're told by the people in charge of the school that they're not allowed to use the gate. Sue and Johnny stay behind, and Reed, Victor, and Ben go through the trip. Reed promises Ben he can be the first person to set foot on the new world, but when they get there, Doom shoves Ben aside and he makes sure he's the first person to step onto the new world, which is a very Doctor Doom kind of moment. Here they call it the negative zone, not Planet Zero, and it's a sort of ruined civilization, full of skeletons and ruined buildings.
Well, I heard one version was that Galactus had eaten the negative zone.
Yes. They find Galactus there. Basically what happens.
And the green slime was the result of Galactus.
Oh, I haven't got in this. The synopsis I've got, there's no mention of green slime. It mentions dark matter. So Galactus is living there. They find Galactus there, and Galactus instantly attacks Doom, seemingly killing him by enveloping him in dark matter. The others barely make it back to the pod, where dark matter is shot by Galactus into the quantum gate, which has the effect of transforming them into the Fantastic Four.
I just want to say that the word dark matter is driving me as crazy as the word quantum at the moment. Please continue.
Yep. Yeah, it's just basically the green goo. So
science words, who cares what they mean?
Here we've got, apparently there was the body horror bit, and then we have a 4-year time jump where Johnny is not in the military, he's a reality TV star.
Interesting. Good choice, actually.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, it fits him better. Yeah, it fits the character.
Sue is working at the Baxter building using her invisibility powers to treat cancer by spotting tumors inside of people by turning them invisible.
Interesting.
And Ben again is an asset for the military here. Reed is hiding in Jakarta, blaming himself for the accident. He's built a Herbie robot and is trying to sell the Fantastic Car to Toyota.
And I guess the Fantastic Car was supposed to have been built from parts left over from the Grimm family's car lot, the junkyard.
Oh, right.
And there was one sketch of it where it was built out of a Winnebago.
Oh my God.
Did they do that in Spaceballs?
Yeah, they did actually.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Now that you mention it.
So here the going back to the quantum gate is accomplished going back to the negative zone is accomplished by Latvians because they were fed that information by Victor at the start. They've built their own quantum gate. However, when they open it, Victor comes through. He is now a being of dark matter. And he takes over the country, becomes its absolute ruler, and he begins a reign of terror as well as forcing everyone to construct a giant dark matter cannon for unknown reasons. Meanwhile, back in New York, the Fantastic Four have to fight a giant moloid. So we have a big set-piece battle on the street where they're fighting a giant mole creature, which apparently was created by being injected with dark matter.
Dark matter, oh my God. I'm going to try to contain my temper. Okay,
apparently, Ben gets swallowed. Like there's some humorous moments. The thing gets swallowed by the giant mole creature. I guess that's funny. Like kind of like how Drax gets swallowed in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And Harvey Elder at this point gets the blood of the creature on him and is transformed into Mole Man.
Okay.
The film ends with a big battle against Dr. Doom, where it turns out that he is again he's a Doombot. Like a dark matter simulacrum of Doom. Right. Doom has been trapped all along in the negative zone. He's not able to leave it because he is the herald of Galactus. Once they've defeated him, they go to the Fantastic Four go to the government and inform them that Galactus will be coming, setting up the sequel.
Okay.
So supposedly there was one version where Doom used his Herald of Galactus powers to take over Latveria.
Yeah.
And with a bunch of Doom bots.
Yeah.
And I guess there was supposed to be a final fight in Latveria against all the Doom bots and by the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
I wonder in this version how Galactus comes from another dimension into our dimension, because you can't just do that. It's a whole other dimension.
Is that why this script had said that Doom was building the dark matter cannon to defeat Galactus?
Okay.
But he was also Galactus's herald at the time, so I don't know how those two things are reconciled.
Okay, all right.
Well, anyway,
wasn't Doom also supposed to fight Annihilus in the negative zone?
Whoa.
No, I haven't got that. I
Holy
think
moly.
maybe in one of the 18 drafts.
There was something that Jeremy Slater wrote where the Annihilus showed up and Doom killed him.
Well, let's just throw some more stuff in there. Put in Norrin Radd and
I guess,
Shalabal while we're at it.
But we're told that his Slater script was going to be way too expensive to make with all of this, Galactus, Annihilus, Doombots, Mole Man. Moloid.
That might be, of course it probably was. But I've got a quote from Slater about, what was informing his screenwriting and what Trank thought of it. This appeared in an article called The Post-Disaster Artist, appearing in something called Polygon in May 2020. This was broadly sympathetic to Trank, but, there's only so much polish you can put on that turd. So Slater says he is a card-carrying nerd, ready to convert comic book lore into bombastic, CG-ready set pieces. Trank is the opposite, having never read a Fantastic Four comic and only having seen a few episodes of the cartoon from the mid-90s and generally disliking comic book movies. This is a quote from Slater. The first Avengers movie had recently come out, and I kept saying, that should be our template. That's what audiences want to see. Slater said, and Josh just fucking hated every second of it. It didn't matter if they were fighting robots in Latveria, or aliens in the negative zone, presumably Annihilus, or mole monsters in downtown Manhattan. Josh just did not give a shit.
So why was he assigned this movie then?
Why didn't he turn it down when it was offered to him? Doesn't make sense.
I don't know. He did work on the script.
Okay.
All right. Let's wind back. I'll talk about the budget. The budget of the film was $120 million. That doesn't include marketing.
Okay.
Right. Box office take $167.9 million. You need to make 3 times the budget of your movie in order to really be considered a success. That is absolutely not. And, including marketing costs, it probably didn't even make back what they spent. Also, that figure is a third of what Rise of Silver Surfer made, which was considered an unsuccessful sequel.
Right.
It made $25.6 million on its opening weekend, which is extremely low for a big budget superhero movie at the height of the superhero movie boom. In contrast, Fantastic Four made $56.1 million on its opening weekend. That was in 2005. Rise of the Silver Surfer made $58.1 million. By way of comparison, Age of Ultron, which I think came out around about the same time as this movie. So this film made $25.6 million on its opening weekend. Age of Ultron made that much just on IMAX on its opening weekend.
Wow.
The film was nominated for many Worst of awards. It won the Golden Raspberry for Worst Picture, Worst Director, and best of all, Worst Prequel, Remake, Ripoff, or Sequel. It was filmed in Louisiana. It was originally supposed to be filmed in Vancouver, like the previous Fantastic Four movies, but they changed it to Louisiana because of the tax break. Trank later claimed infamously that the producers actually rewrote the script as he was shooting it. And of course, there were reshoots, and obviously because
which Trank wasn't even involved in, right? He
had to be involved in it for Directors Guild reasons, or he would have had his name taken off the film. But Trank claims that although he was on set and involved, they were kind of freezing him out. He claims in this interview post Disaster Artist that he, complaining about how he was being cut out, the studio negotiated with him an arrangement where he would get to re-edit his own version of the movie while Fox worked on its own cut, and both versions of it would be screened for test audiences.
Weird.
Yeah, this is what he claims. And at this point, Fox hired an editor called Stephen Rivkin, who worked on Avatar and the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. He, according to Trank, Rivkin chose different takes for every single scene in the movie, and according to, again, quote, became the de facto director.
Okay.
Yeah. It seems like Rivkin, at this point, during the reshoots, Rivkin has given all the resources and was allowed to make reshoots and rewrites and things for his version, and Trank was not being given anywhere near the same kind of, resources. And this arrangement, if it indeed existed, never eventuated. The 2 cuts were never put in contention or anything like that.
Tim, were you going to say something?
I think, I have a lot of things to say, but I think that part of the reason the studio kind of turned against him was that he had been really tough to work with on the set. Apparently Well, okay. Something we haven't talked about is
The tweet.
the fact, well,
We'll
that
get, we
too,
get to
but
that. You go, Tim.
Johnny is black and Sue is white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Trank wanted a black Sue,
Yes.
and
Okay.
the studio fought him on that.
Oh,
Apparently
okay.
they thought, no, we need a white blonde girl in this movie. So they came up with this idea that she was adopted from Kosovo, as she says in the movie. But Trank resented that and took it out on Kate
Oh,
Mara,
jeez.
and
Oh, I
was
believe
just
it.
really nasty and cold to her all the way
Oh,
through.
jeez. Okay.
He brought Teller in himself, but eventually they got into a conflict also. And Trank was having a lot of anger issues on the set.
Yes.
And that was kind of getting out. Well, and especially Fox apparently released information about that on purpose after his tweet that Trank put out right as the movie was coming out. And he wrote and then quickly deleted. A year ago,
Yes.
I had a fantastic version of this, and it would have received great reviews. You'll probably never see it. That's reality, though.
Yeah. This is this tweet here is a framing device for what I wanted to talk about, some of the problems that you've just raised that happened on the film. So as you said, this is like just before it came out, like the night before almost, he tweeted that, deleted it, I think within an hour, but it was too late.
Yeah.
One publication, The Wrap, speculated probably cost the film $5 to $10 million alone, just that tweet. So why did he tweet this? Why did he do it? Okay, there's a couple. Why might he have do it? Reviews are coming in and they're bad. You know, it's been pre-screened, and so he wants to clear his name. Maybe he wants people to know that this isn't because of him that this shit movie is there. Before this, he was active in promoting the film, doing interviews, all the usual kind of marketing stuff that you do, and he was saying it was a good film, and he was downplaying the idea that he had been booted from the production. Yet at this point, because of the bad reviews, maybe he jumps in and mentions it. However, as Tim pointed out, everybody involved with the production, with a few exceptions, very few exceptions, I think only the guy that played Doom, Toby Kebbell, is the only person that said that the original version of the film was good. He said, people said that he was very erratic on set, including this broadly kind of like favorable article, the post-disaster artist. Even that's admitting that, like apparently he's often high. He was extremely undergoing a lot of stress. He was very angry. He was abusive to the actors. So as specifically the actors playing Reed and Sue, he was involved in some kind of problem where his dogs ruined a house that he was renting at the time.
Right. Yeah.
It's sometimes offered as an explanation for why he behaved the way he did, that his dogs caused $100,000 worth of damage to a property that he was living in while he was shooting the film in Louisiana. Chain smoking cigarettes, constantly smoking marijuana, showing up late, just a kind of like a really combative and abusive. And in this narrative, it's not the studio conflict. It's not conflict at the studio that's calling it. It's all just coming from Trank. On the other hand, other people say that if Trank was stressed, it's because the studio kept chopping and changing the movie. They kept slashing the budget, and they delayed the approvals for his casting choices, including forcing he wanted a black family he wanted Sue Storm to be played by a black actress, and the studio just said, no, we can't sell a movie where there's a black actress playing this major character like this. Like that.
Yeah, I guess they cut several action scenes just as they were about to start shooting. Like, nope, not doing this one.
That's it. And, Kebbell said, I tell you the honest truth is Trank did cut a great film that you'll never see. That is a shame, a much darker version, and you'll never see it. On the other hand, in this version, it was, Kebbell had a lot more screen time. That might explain why he finds that favorable. Okay, so what happened?
I mean, I don't know that we can actually see it because supposedly some of Trank's intended scenes were never shot.
Yes. No, exactly.
So there can't be a director's cut.
So what happened? So first of all, what happened? Why? There's truth in all of this. Trank definitely was not, was erratic on set. That's a matter of public record from people speaking about it. The studio is definitely putting pressure on him and resisting the choices he made. You hire someone who's made one film and has a distinctive, I suppose, vision, and then you start attacking them for pursuing that vision. It's understandable why he was so stressed. Look, so what happened? Look, it's possible, this is Trank's second film. It's likely that he simply just didn't have the gravitas, the maturity to manage kind of big studio politics. You know, he couldn't liaise effectively with the studio. You know, that presumably is why he started to behave the way he did and why the studio started cracking down as hard as they did. And those two problems, I imagine, were reinforcing one another over and over. I think as evidence of the fact that Trank is probably a bit out of control and hot-headed is the fact that he made that tweet at all, you know, because it cost him. He has regretted it since then, and he specifically said, you know, this offended all of my allies, everyone that was supporting me. It offended them. You know,
the friends I really hurt his career too going forward. He was he was planning to do this Boba Fett film.
Yes. I was going to mention that. Yeah.
He had pitched it to Catherine Kennedy, and then when she heard about all the backstage stuff at the FF film, then she lost interest.
That's right. Yeah. I didn't know this. I found out about this reading this article that he was going to do the second standalone Star Wars movie after Rogue One, a Boba Fett film. As you said, Kathleen Kennedy personally signed off on it. You know, at this point, only J.J. Abrams was the only director that had been allowed to make a Star Wars movie. This is and now this guy who'd done one film and is working on his second is approved to make a film in this property that Disney just paid like $4 billion for. But what happened? Yeah, like you said, he got removed from the project. He didn't show up at a Comic-Con event promoting it. Then a month later, he announced that he was stepping away from it. But I think the writing's on the wall. He would have been booted. And since then, of course, as you pointed out, he's only made one other movie in 2020, a film about Al Capone with Tom Hardy.
Yeah. And a lot of what I've been saying here the past 15 minutes is from this video from the Bullets and Blockbusters YouTube channel. They also mentioned that because of the flop of this film, not only was the sequel canceled, but there was this whole plan of crossovers between the Marvel properties that Fox had the rights to at the time. FF was going to have a cameo in Deadpool 2, and then they were going to, I'm a little surprised at this because the MCU was already doing a version of it. They were going to do a Superhero Registration Act storyline with the Fox Marvel heroes, where Molecule Man destroys a large part of Manhattan in a fight with, I think it was the Human Torch. And then eventually it comes down to a fight between the FF and the X-Men.
Wow.
But all of that got thrown out because this movie failed.
Yeah. That's right. As for the music, the scorer for the film was a guy called Marco Beltrami, who's worked extensively with Wes Craven, and he also did the score for Snowpiercer and Hellboy. Okay. But as we mentioned, Philip Glass was hired to do work on it as well, and you can definitely hear his influence at times because it has some of those noodly kind of scales that he likes to do in some of those scenes. The only other thing I want to say about casting is that Mads Mikkelsen, apparently, we often on this podcast, Kamal, Mads Mikkelsen is reading for things that were the films that we've watched, and he has not got into them. For this, he read for Doctor Doom, and he said he wasn't even asked to say any lines. All he was asked to do was stretch out his arms.
Huh. How weird.
He wasn't even doing Reed Richards, so he was reading for Doom.
Maybe he's confused about what he read for?
Well, he didn't read anything, apparently. He just showed up, and maybe they'd already decided who they were going to hire, and they just needed to give Mads Mikkelsen some of their time. All right, let's do our votes.
Okay. Well, Fantastic Four 51 is a huge yay for me. I love this issue. Ultimate Fantastic Four is junk. That is forgotten, and I hate it. And that's my votes on the comics.
What do you reckon, Tim?
Yeah, the Lee Kirby stuff is fine. We did point out some goofy things in it, and I just hand wave it away. But yeah, the Ultimate Fantastic Four, this was around the time I started getting sick of Bendis. With all the snaky word balloons. Because he writes so much dialogue for one panel. If the panels were Lee Kirby size, they would be just as crowded with dialogue as 60s comics. But I don't know. I guess I was kind of interested reading it, maybe mostly just because of all the similarities to the movie that I was picking up. And okay, that's why they did this. I was actually though interested in reading more, so I think I'll have to give it a yay.
Oh, very good. For me, it's a yay for the Kirby Lee stuff. Like I said, I just think it's great. Everything's there on display that you need to know about that collaboration and that style of storytelling and these characters and what goes on in that universe. Just There's even a bit in the middle where at the Cozy Campus coffee shop where we see Johnny just dealing with a bully.
Yep, and using his flame powers for one panel. Yeah,
he lights up his thumb just to show them that he's actually the Human Torch. This is it's just such a great interlude.
Yeah,
it's got nothing to do with the story, and yet it's just a great little scene where like some bully's dumping water. Like Johnny Storm still has to deal with bullies, even though he's a literal world-saving fireman. He goes to college. Yeah, I love it. And like Tim, I also have a bit of a soft spot for these Ultimate comics. I know they're pretty crap. But I often find myself coming back and reading them, especially the ones that Warren Ellis wrote. Yeah, so that's a yay for me.
Okay, this movie's obvious nay for me. The Thing has no pants, which really bothered me. Bothered me that he was wearing no pants. There's no Stan Lee cameo, which maybe is an indicator of something going on.
Well, yeah, I saw that he refused to.
Interesting. So there you go, big nay.
Tim? Yeah, I think that's obvious. I don't. It's hard to imagine how anybody could give it a yay. But yeah. There's just they might have been able to make an interesting movie with a consistent script if they hadn't been for all the reshoots and rewrites. I mean, not a good Fantastic Four movie, but an interesting movie.
Yeah.
We didn't mention, I had seen somewhere that Trank was kind of insistent on making this take place in the Chronicle universe.
Yeah.
And particularly the negative zone was supposed to be someplace that was connected to the Chronicle story. And the studio said, no, don't do that. And he kind of did it anyway. I'm not sure if there's any way you could pick that up from the film, but
what even is the Chronicle universe? A universe where you can find crystals in a cave that give you telekinetic powers?
I don't know, but I mean the same world as that story.
I haven't seen Chronicle. I'd like to.
I had never even heard of it until we started preparing for this.
But there's discussion online that, or in newspaper, or in just kind of like reporting and reviews on the film, that it feels that Trank was trying to make a Fantastic Four Chronicle movie, essentially. How does that measure up, do you think, Kumar?
It's hard to... I don't see it because that's a found footage superhero movie. It's very unusual. And it's pretty small scale in terms of just these three teen friends until the big climactic battle in the city.
What about in terms of tone? What's the tone of Chronicle like? Is it a similar tone to this movie where it's serious?
No. In fact, it's close. When the kids get their powers, they just have fun with them. They get their telekinetic powers and they like play pranks on people. It's more like Johnny in the previous Fantastic Four movies. That's something that's actually missing. That playfulness is missing here, I felt. Yeah.
Right. Well, as for my vote, it's of course, again, it's nay. This is just I've seldomly have I seen a film that's made so little sense and has so readily contradicted itself from scene to scene. I kind of, where it's so obvious that we have at least two dueling scripts and probably even more, where dialogue is just contradicted a scene later or later in the movie, or they leave plot points that have been left in that haven't contributed to later events. It's just such a mess. Also, the pacing is way off. I can't imagine a Fantastic Four movie or a superhero movie where the characters don't even have their powers until 50 minutes in, until halfway through the film. That's a baffling choice.
Yeah.
And if you were going to do it, and you can't say that the film instead has devoted itself to a character study, because I feel like I hardly know these characters.
Yep.
I don't understand where that first 50 minutes went. What the hell happened? What was going on? I think you could, the tone I don't think is, the tone is a big problem because they can't decide what the tone is. But I think you could make a film. I think you could make an interesting creative movie about the Fantastic Four, something like, I suppose, Ultimate Fantastic Four, where it's a lot more serious, where it's a world where the Fantastic Four, instead of being rich and famous and having wealth and power and the freedom to do what they like, where they're constrained by, I don't know, like forces in society or something like that.
Maybe, but based on the trailers for the new movie that's coming out, they've gone in the exact opposite.
Don't worry about the new. I'm just thinking, if the film that Trank wanted to make, the film that wasn't a comic.
Yeah, but I feel like that what you're talking about is already X-Men or Avengers or other superhero properties. That's not the point of Fantastic Four leading into adaptation.
Well, this is
That's
when
why
we
it's a
talk about
nay for me,
adaptation.
is because they haven't adapted the idea of the Fantastic Four, as I said at
Oh
the
yeah,
very beginning of the
absolutely.
episode.
Terrible adaptation.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think of course this is a terrible adaptation. That goes without saying. That goes without saying. Look, I've got a quote here. So one of the producers on the film was Simon Kinberg, who worked on X-Men. He's the co-writer of this, another one of the co-writers of this film, as well as a producer. And he had a lot of say, apparently, in what was going on. If you had to find if you're a Trank fan and you had to find a villain of the piece, you would probably land on this guy, Simon Kinberg. He later wrote, I think, Days of Future Past. Oh no, he'd already written Days of Future Past, I think, at this point. And he later wrote Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, which he directed as well.
Ooh.
So that says a lot about, I guess, the quality of the decisions he ended up making.
Yeah.
So he said about this film as an adaptation of comics, he said, I actually think that this Fantastic Four movie is sort of a celebration of all the Fantastic Four comics that have preceded it. We have elements from the original Fantastic Four, that there's a sort of optimism and inspirational quality to the film. In some ways, a comedy that was really distinct in the original Fantastic Four. Also, the notion of this dysfunctional surrogate family that comes together and has to work together is very present in the movie that owes a great debt to the original, and this idea that they are scientists, and it's almost like this science adventure rather than being superheroes. They are almost like scientific adventurers. That's a big part of the movie too. I disagree with every single point that he raised. There is no optimism and inspirational quality. No. There is no comedy. They don't feel like a family. They don't feel like scientists, and this doesn't feel like a science adventure. In that sense, it's an utter failure as an adaptation. And to finish up, one more quote from Kinberg and one more quote from Trank, it only speaks to the greatness of any story that has been told for decades or centuries that people still want to tell that story. But you can't just keep telling it the same way over and over again, maybe. Kinberg, I think it's true for a lot of movies that you can take license with adapting the underlying material, and you will be forgiven for it if it's good, and you will not be if it's bad. That I do agree with.
As far as him saying that it was a comedy, I think the only time when it really felt like it might turn into a comedy was the first part with Reed and Ben as kids, and I mentioned the you're insane, thanks. So it's kind of hard to believe that and the body horror are in the same movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's moments of levity. But to say that this is comedic in tone at any point, not at all.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I should say it feels like maybe it's trying to be comedic in the early on.
It wishes
and then
it was
says,
comedic.
"Well, screw that. No, we're not going to be comedic."
Was Dan Castellaneta's character supposed to be comedic? Was it supposed to be funny?
I don't know. He was more annoying in the way he treated Reed.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like comedy that's not working.
Okay, please like, rate, review, subscribe. Please contact us or leave a comment through the email address in the show notes, or send us a DM on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, or YouTube. And you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/comicbookmovieoblivion. Okay, next week, we're going to do a second Marvel movie in a row. This is very unusual for us. But Peter Allen David passed away like a week ago. So we're going to look at the Ang Lee Hulk movie from 2003-ish, and probably some Peter David issues of the Hulk from around that era. I think around number 377 was like a really key one. So we'll plop that in there, maybe look at a few around that circle. That's probably enough if you're following along.
Yeah, great.
All right, see you next time.
See you then.